Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar, where we sit down and talk with interesting professional guitar players, uncover their stories, and discover what makes them tick. If you love guitar, music, and the backstory of people's lives, stick around. You're in the right place. Hi, this is Craig. Just want to let you know you can now advertise here on Everyone Loves Guitar podcast. For more information, go to everyonelovesguitar.com/advertise. That's everyonelovesguitar.com/advertise. Hey everybody, this is Craig Garber from Everyone Loves Guitar, and I'm with not only a great guitar player, but a super cool guy. We're with Rick Eckhardt today. Rich has been with Toby Keith for 20 years. He got his first guitar when he was 8 years old. In '89, he made his move to Nashville, where his first performance was actually at the Grand Ole Opry. We'll find out how that worked. And soon after that, he was asked to join country music hitmaker Eddie Raven out on tour. He always worked steadily as a musician. He's been fortunate enough to perform with tons of really cool icons, including Charlie Daniels, Willie Nelson, Ted Nugent, Sammy Hagar, Merle Haggard, Steve Cropper, Glenn Campbell, Joe Perry, Delbert McClinton, Steven Tyler, Shania Twain, and Jerry Lee Lewis. Dude, that is like, I feel like we could be done now. That's just so impressive.
Yeah, if it wasn't me, I'd think, man, this is going to be cool. That sounds awesome.
His touring has taken him around the world. He's performed not only here in the States, all over the place in Canada, but he's also performed throughout Europe, the Middle East, and Asia. He joined country superstar Toby Keith's band in 1998, and he's been his right-hand man on lead guitar ever since. Year after year, Toby hosts some of the highest grossing tours nationwide, and Rich has also played on albums with Toby that have achieved multi-platinum status. He's appeared on over a dozen music videos, TV commercials, movies, and TV series, including the ABC hit series Nashville. He's been featured in numerous guitar magazines, including Guitar World, Guitar One, Premier Guitar, and 20th Century Guitar, and he even turned up on a billboard in downtown Nashville, Tennessee. Dude, what was that about?
Paul Reed Smith did a billboard promoting their players in town, and it's funny, they put me up and they forgot to change the billboard, so I was up there for like 9 months because they were rotating about every 6 weeks or so, and then that one stayed up for 9 months, and so it was kind of cool. Every time you drive downtown, there's my mug.
Yeah, that is cool.
On a big billboard. Yeah.
Did you get like a picture of that, or you had to get a couple of pictures of that? No,
yeah, I do. I've got one in my computer somewhere. Yeah,
that should be your Facebook.
Yeah, it was actually me and Greg Forsman and I'm drawing a blank on his name right now, but the guitar player with Jason Aldean, and I apologize to him for not remembering his name.
Sadler.
No.
Was it Sadler Aiden?
No.
With Jason Aldean.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I interviewed him. I interviewed Greg too, just recently. Cool guy.
Oh yeah, he's great. Who the hell? I'll come up with it later. I'm just bad with names, and I mean we're buddies and everything, and his name's just falling out of my head. I'm sorry.
No.
But anyway, it was the three of us together on the billboard, and so we were all up there for quite a while.
Very cool, man. That is awesome. Rich also has 2 solo CDs, and as I said, he's appeared on the hit television series Nashville as lead guitarist and band leader for Luke Wheeler, who's played by Will Chase. He appeared in over a dozen episodes spanning 4 of the series' 5 seasons. Ted Nugent called Rich one amongst his favorite guitar players in a Music Radar magazine interview. And from 2014 to 16, Rich played guitar for a Top Shelf Journey tribute band. In 2016 to 17, during the off season with Toby Keith, Rich played lead guitar for country traditionalist Shane Owens. And in 2017, Rich became part of the house band for the Nashville House Party at Nashville's War Memorial. He's entertained 4 American presidents, and he's been seen on most of the industry staple television shows, including Today Show, the Super Bowl, and the Tonight Show. And he's also a very busy session player in Nashville. Rich, thanks so much for your time, and I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Yeah, yeah. Glad to be here. All that really sounds great. Boy, when you hear somebody else read it back, it's like, boy, that guy's had an amazing career.
Well, you have, man. I mean, you really have. You've had a great career, and you've had you've played like with the cream of the crop, and obviously your work ethic is like second to none. So,
yeah, that's been the most fun thing for me is some of the iconic people that I've found myself on stage with. I mean, when you're sitting there, playing guitar and Steven Tyler is your singer. I mean, that's pretty amazing. Not a lot of people get to do that. And Willie Nelson and Merle Haggard and, just the long list, a lot of the ones you read there. And, I mean, even Toby Keith, I mean, just a phenomenal singer and superstar. And I'm on stage with him every single night. It's really been pretty amazing, an amazing ride. To find myself in that position, where I'm doing that.
So let me ask you this: what do you think accounts for that? And I know you might be inclined to say, "Well, I was in the right place at the right time," and that's probably true on some of these. But you can't have a whole lifetime of this at the right place at the right time. That's like not possible. Yeah,
so, I mean, certainly timing is a lot to do with it, but just a good work ethic and trying to be a likable enough guy. There are a lot of guys in Nashville that I think are much more likable than I am, but apparently I'm likable enough that that people don't mind working with me. So I think that's a big part of it. That's a big part of it. Well, and really just doing your homework, I think, is a big thing. There's a lot of guys are lazier. I've seen a lot of guys that fall by the wayside that don't have the work ethic. So they might get called because of something they've done in the past, but they don't last on a gig because they don't have the work ethic to keep up with everybody else. As far as learning the material and committing to perfection, or not perfection, committing to the quality of performance. Learning the material and having the right gear and all that kind of stuff. All that plays a part into it. But definitely learning the material. That's a big part. Showing up prepared to a rehearsal is a huge score with any artist, because nobody wants to have to spend special time with you because you didn't learn the material before you got there. Does that carry over, that reputation? So when one guy wants you for a gig or a session, does that become your reputation? Rich is on top of his stuff. He's prepared. I got called on a day's notice to play with Ty England. He was Garth Brooks' sideman for a long time, and he went out on his own back in the 90s. And they were on their way down to Florida, and his guitar player, his wife went into labor after they left town, about 5 hours after they left town. So guitar player got off in Atlanta, flew back to Nashville. And so my wife at the time was working for Garth's management company. So, they contacted management and said, "Hey, we need to find a guitar player that can come down to Florida and fill in tonight." And so my wife recommended me. And she was funny. She goes, "You don't have to do this, but if they need somebody." And I was like, "No, absolutely, I'll do it." So, I went downtown. I picked up. This was long enough ago. It was a cassette tape of his material, and I just started listening to it. And I started getting the main licks down and kind of getting the songs in my head. I remember getting on the plane with my little cassette player and listening to it on the way down to Florida. And unbeknownst to me, the act that was opening up for him in this club had a guy in it that was an old buddy of mine, bass player David James. He was the first guy that hired me in Nashville, and so they were talking, and one of Ty or one of his guys was talking to Dave and said, "Man, our guitar player had to fly home, and we got this guy coming down. We don't know anything about him. We've never worked with him before. Rick Eckhardt is his name." And Dave James goes, "You got nothing to worry about." That is so cool. Nobody's going to come down more prepared than Rick Eckhardt. So that's where the reputation really helps you. That is so cool. Were you always like this, like throughout your whole life? I think so. I was raised by very German, European German parents, Austrian actually, but German speaking. And, the Germans are very strict
Yes.
people, very kind of direct and organized. But yeah, very organized people. And so that was just the way I was raised and the way I learned. It's like if you commit to something, you do it, and you do it full-heartedly. You don't go at it half-assed. So that's just kind of always been my approach to things.
That's great, man. That's really good. Yeah, I've had a number of in business interactions with Germans, and they're very there's not a lot of wiggle room either there.
Right. Yeah. No, there's not. And sometimes that's a problem because people like that wiggle room. Yeah. So, sometimes, I can be considered to be a pain in the ass because I don't allow the wiggle room. But, it's just, you get on a path and I'm seeing it through to the end already. It's not like we're working this out as we go. It's like I understand what's going to happen when we get to the last page of the book.
Right.
I already know what's going to be there. So for you to start, throwing in all these little other things that you want to do, it's like, well, that's a different book now. Now we're going down a different road, and that's I should be more flexible, but sometimes I'm not.
Well, what I was going to say is the guys that I've worked with, the lack of wiggle room really applies more to themselves.
Yeah.
Then it's like, with others, but really their own rigidity with themselves is very, they're very demanding, very, with German work is very precise. It's very, look at all the vehicles that come, the Mercedes, BMWs, all those high end vehicles, and it's all about precision and stuff. So.
Yeah. When I came out with Toby, I didn't have a rehearsal with him. I didn't have an audition. I didn't have anything. And it was just, hit the stage in front of 80,000 people, simulcast on the radio, never played with them before.
How'd you get that gig? That's wild.
Yeah. Well, it was through Reputation again. Toby was looking for a guitar player. I was looking for a job. My name came up. And Toby said, well, let's try that guy. The first time I met Toby was at his number one party for I Should Have Been a Cowboy, which was in '93. And I remember talking to him and saying, man, I just think it's so great because they were doing pictures for like Billboard magazine and all this kind of stuff. Number one with the gold record, and he included his band in all the pictures. And a lot of artists, it's Toby Keith. It's not the Easy Money Band. It's Toby Keith. But he included his band in that because he felt like that they were all part of it. And I remember telling him I thought that was really cool because a lot of artists wouldn't do that. And so that was the first time I met him, and of course some of his band members. And then I'd see these guys again out on the road at festivals. I'd be playing with a different act on the same festival here and there. I remember one we did. It was a Christmas show, and I was with John Barry at the time, who had a hit called Your Love Amazes Me. He had several, but that was the one he's best known for. Joe Diffie was on it, and Toby Keith, and we were playing at the Universal Amphitheater out in L.A., and it was a Christmas thing. And, John had just put a Christmas record out, so we did all this wonderful Christmas music. Toby did a song called Redneck Sleigh that he wrote, and then he did his regular show. That was all. That was as Christmas as he was going to have. But that was just another time running into him and seeing him. So, so from 93 to 98, we just kept bumping, crossing paths. And then in 98, when they needed a guitar player, my name came up, and the guys were like, oh, yeah, we know him. Yeah, I was the first guy in the band that wasn't from Oklahoma City. The whole band was started and was put together from Oklahoma. I was in Nashville. So they were taking a big chance. Toby could have gone, we're in Oklahoma. There's plenty of Oklahoma guys we can get.
Sure.
So he took a shot on, bringing in a Nashville guy. And like I said, that very first show, there just wasn't an opportunity because of where they lived and where I lived to do any sort of rehearsal or anything like that. So I had 10 days to learn his entire show, and came out, and just nailed it that very first day. And I think that's why I'm still there now, because of the impression I made on that very first show.
Well, plus I'm sorry.
I was going to say my energy was up, and that fed into the rest of the band and Toby's performance as well.
And he knew you though from seeing you. He was probably confident because he had seen you play so many times. Your playing was not an issue, I would imagine.
No, playing was not an issue at all. And I can't say for sure that Toby had ever seen me play, but I know his band did. And his band were the ones that recommended me.
Man, that's cool. Was that at that point in time, was that the largest audience you'd played in front of?
Oh, let me think if I'd ever done anything larger than that before that. Toby wasn't even the headliner at that time. He was still at a point where you'd go, I played with Toby Keith, and people would go, I don't know who that is.
Really?
Yeah. And then you'd start mentioning songs. Well, should have been a cowboy, a little less talk. And people knew the songs. I mean, that was before How Do You Like Me Now in 2000 is a song that put Toby on the map. That's the point where everybody knew who Toby Keith was. I started with him in 98, so I had a couple of years of, I don't know that guy. He was just another, voice on country radio at that time. But I forgot where we were going with the question.
80,000. No, it's all cool, man.
The 80,000.
Yeah. It's all good.
80,000 people. I'm trying to think if I had done anything that large before that. A lot of those festivals are that large. This was a festival crowd. This wasn't a Toby hard ticket. So I may have done some of that before. I'd been playing on the road for 10 years already before that, and a lot of the festivals. In fact, the one that I did with Toby was the Wheeling Jamboree in the Hills, and I had just played that, I think, the year before with John Barry. Probably similar crowd.
Wow, that's amazing.
60 to 80,000, yeah.
But still pretty intimidating as a first gig.
Well, yeah, as a first gig, But I had two other when I started with Eddie Raven, my first show with him was on television, and then when I started with Mel McDaniel, I did the exact same television show. My very first appearance with him was on that same television show. That's
wild. What show is that?
It was called Nashville Now with Ralph Emery. It was a cable show on the Nashville network, which is defunct now. But my very first appearance with both of those guys, and those were my first two big artists, and I'm on television.
That's really weird.
I had to call all my friends on the phone, long distance, calling all my friends. Hey, I'm going to be on television. Watch me, So everything that I made on the show, I burned up in phone bill.
Back in the day. Yeah, absolutely, man.
Yeah, you couldn't just post it on Facebook then.
No. And there's a plus and a minus to that, right?
Right.
You started playing at 8, which is really young, not unheard of, but it's very young. How did that come about? And did you ever take lessons or?
I did take lessons. I just remember hearing the Beatles and stuff like that on the radio, and I just thought, man, I'd love to learn how to do that, how to make that sound. And then and everybody always thinks this is funny, but the Monkees and the Partridge Family on television.
Oh no, those guys are awesome back in the for our time. Yeah.
They just made it look like fun. I just used to always fantasize about that garage that the Partridge Family rehearsed in, with all the amps along the wall and all that kind of stuff, and the stop sign, that they stole off the corner up in there. And I just thought that's really, really cool, and that looks like something I'd like to try to do. So those were the things that made it appealing to me. And so at a very young age, I mean, eight's young. When I used to teach guitar, I wouldn't take a student that was under 10 because they just didn't have the focus, and I always felt like a hypocrite because here I am. I started at 8. But I wouldn't take a student any younger than 10. Yeah, but I think the times changed, though. In the 80s, things were a little bit more instant, and people wanted instant gratification. If you get a student that comes in and after one lesson they're not playing like Eddie Van Halen, they're frustrated. With me, it's like I used to love just rehearsing with myself and learning and growing, and I couldn't play that lick 15 minutes ago, but now I can.
Yeah, it's so cool the thing about guitar, isn't it?
Yeah, was exciting to me.
Really cool. And now they have stuff like, you don't use this probably, but I have this thing called Automatic Slow Downer. It's a little software, and it'll play it'll slow down as much as you need to, but it'll play it in the right pitch.
Yeah, I do something similar. I actually have Acid Pro, which is an app. It's a recording app, and you can do that. You can upload the song at tempo, and then you can slow it down some, and it stays in pitch. I used to do. I used to play records. I used to play 45s at 33.
Yeah, remember that?
Yeah. And so it would slow it down, but I'd have to detune my guitar down, 4 steps or something like that, so that it was in tune with the record, and then try to work it up and then tune it back up to normal and see if I could play along at regular pitch.
Yeah. And the voice on that always sounded really weird. That was the problem.
Yeah. Yeah. It was weird. And it was always weird to me when you slowed it down, you always heard there was something different about the voicings and something different about the approach. When you hear it at fast speed, it always sounded different, slowed down to me.
Hmm.
But sometimes it was just the clarity. Even at that lower pitch, I was able to hear, notes that I wasn't hearing at full speed. So it was really very helpful.
Were your parents musical at all, or did you have siblings that were musical?
No, not musical. No, I have a great aunt that I don't remember ever meeting in Austria that was an opera singer. And my dad was an artist. My dad was a painter.
Okay.
And I think I get the creative gene from him. My mom certainly couldn't sing.
So they were supportive though of you doing all this at a young age and encouraging of you.
Yeah. I asked for a guitar for Christmas at 8 years old, and I got one.
That's really
so
cool.
Santa was supportive anyway. I don't know about my parents.
That's cool, man. What 89? What made you move to Nashville, and how did you get that first gig playing at the Opry?
I'd been knocking around the DC area for 10 years, from high school to 89. I graduated in 79. Putting bands together, going out and playing, where I could, when I could. And I moved to Nashville. I was actually thinking about LA, New York, or Nashville. Because really, honestly, to me, I didn't grow up with country. I grew up with rock. And
you grew up in DC?
In DC, yeah. In Maryland, actually, a suburb of DC. But I grew up listening to rock, and that's the music that I loved and that interested me. But I just thought, man, if I go to Nashville, I'm going to be a rock guy in a country environment. I'm going to be unique and different. And so I'll be kind of a standout. And, there was something to that. But really, honestly, I didn't care if I moved to New York and played in a Broadway pit band. I mean, as long as I was making music, that was important. But when I came to Nashville, I came at a time where country music was changing, and guys like Garth Brooks were hitting, and Travis Tritt, and guys that were a little bit edgier. So coming as a rock player, it was like, we need this. This is kind of where the music is going. So that was very helpful. Now, the guys I played with early on were more traditional. Eddie Raven was my first artist gig, and his stuff was very, I wouldn't say it was traditional. Eddie had his own sound, but it wasn't as rock edged as let's say a Travis Tritt. But it certainly wasn't the, crying my beer kind of stuff that people think of as country music. When I got with Mel McDaniel was really almost a rockabilly, not really rockabilly, but he was more of a rock act, like a 1-4-5 chord progression kind of rock act. I was finding myself playing a lot of the old rock and roll licks that I learned growing up with his music. So, I was starting to see the progression going towards a little bit more rock edge stuff and getting away from the amazing, chicken picking kind of stuff, which I still don't do well after 30 years here. But I was starting to move away from that a little bit and moving more towards a rock. So my timing was just really good coming here in 89, being the kind of player that I was.
And you just 89, so you were like about 18, right?
No, I was 10 years older now.
Sorry, I'm sorry, 28. I meant wrong.
20. I was 27.
Yeah. I missed the carry the one.
You got to carry the one.
So, I mean, that takes a lot of balls. I mean, you didn't know anybody here or anything?
No, didn't know anybody. I'd never been here before.
Wow.
And never been here. I came down a month earlier to find an apartment, and that was the first time that I'd ever been to Nashville. How'd you get the first gig? I was.
That's amazing. You knew nobody. Your first gig is at the Opry.
Somebody recommended to me. It was actually Bob Heatherly, who passed away just a few years ago. He was really good to me, and he was a friend of a friend. And so when I came down here, I called him, and he was in the music business. He worked for RCA Records, and so he kind of took me around town and I mean, drove me around and, took me backstage to the Opry and stuff like this. I was like, wow, this guy, he owns this town. He just makes a phone call and from his car phone. Again, this is before cell phone, from his car phone and calls the Opry. Hey, I'm coming back and, got a guest. And so we go backstage to the Opry for a couple of minutes and we're standing watching the show. And we go to a couple of these other Nashville Palace and a couple of these other places. And he's telling me, see the guy up there playing guitar? He's the band leader. That's the guy you're going to want to know. You can come down here and sit in and jam. So he just kind of ran me around town, and he recommended that I join the Musicians Union.
Okay.
And I did. And the union had a board. I think they may still have it, where you could put your card up there and people call you off of that. And I got a call. I actually got quite a few calls from people early on, and it was all the same thing. It was, hey, we've got a band and we're playing covers and we got a van and a trailer and we're going to go to Arkansas and play the Ramada Inn Lounge in Arkansas. And I kept turning all those down. I was like, nah, I just moved to town. I want to kind of get to know the scene a little bit. I want to, try to work my way into doing sessions and things like that. So I kept turning that down. And then I got a call from David James, who I mentioned earlier. And Dave said, hey, I got a band and we're doing covers and we got a van and trailer and we're going to go to Arkansas and play the Ramada Inn there. And I said, man, that sounds really good. Let's do that. And he goes, well, we've got that booked for next week, but this Saturday we're playing the Opry. We're playing the what do they call it? They call it the Gospel Hour on the Opry. It started at midnight, and so I was like, yeah, man, I'm in. And so that's how I ended up playing the Opry on my very first gig, and that was with Dave James, and he had a band called the James Brothers. He and his brother Chris, and the drummer in that band. It was just the four of us. Chris played keys, Dave played bass and sang. And the drummer was David Fontana, who was DJ Fontana's son, and DJ was Elvis's drummer on all those old Elvis records. Oh,
wow.
So it was a really cool
That's really
band.
cool.
Yeah, it was a really cool band. And Dave had this amazing sort of Joe Cocker meets Bryan Adams kind of raspy voice, and his brother was an amazing singer also and piano player. And it was just the four of us. And here I am, new to town. They really took a chance on me because they gave me a set list that had about 112 songs on it, and I think I knew 12.
Wow.
Had a lot of woodshedding and a lot of homework to do.
Holy smokes.
And they could have, and again, it was another thing where they could have gone, nah, we need a guy with more experience. We need a guy that knows this 100 and, all 100 of these songs. And they just took a chance on me. And so I jumped in a van with them and went to Arkansas and played a, Ramada Inn, and we ended up doing a lot of work together for about the first year and a half that I was in Nashville. And Dave Fontana was like the only drummer I worked with for about the first 3 years I was in town. Because every gig that I got, I'd call him. Every gig that he got, he would call me, and we just always played together.
You know what though? Your energy level is high, man, and I bet that was a very attractive thing to, because I know with me, to me, relationships and just experiences in general, it's a transference of energy. Mm-hmm. And whenever you're with, I could always feel when I'm with someone who's got low energy, man. And I don't like being around them, to be honest with you. It's a drag. Yeah.
No. And I feel that too, when I'm around people that have that low energy and you're just like, shh, I got to get away from this.
Yeah. Right. Like, right. Yeah. Whatever you're doing, stop doing it and like get to the gym, something, man. You got to like, right. Well, no, I mean, because it's quite apparent and it's, but I bet your energy level, cause it's so high, I'll guarantee that was, when you meet someone like that, it's really almost like you're not taking a chance on them because that guy or that gal is going to get it done.
Well, and that could be exactly why they felt like they can go with a relatively unknown to Nashville. But I mean, I owe Dave and his brother a lot because, they really showed me the ropes. And I saw where there were a lot of shyster guys in town that take advantage of you and all that. And Dave wasn't one of those guys. And I've always thought to myself, well, what if my first experience was with one of those guys? Yeah. And it could have soured me on the whole business, on Nashville, the whole 9 yards. And I could have been, spit out of the bottom, and gone home or, given up on it or just decided this wasn't for me. And but because I went with the right guy, I just had a good feeling. And again, it was a feeling thing because like I said, sure. I got the same phone call from 8 different people offering the same gig basically. And for something about it felt right when Dave called me and said, this is what we're doing. Not a lot of money in it, all this. And I was like, I don't think it matters. I think this is where I want to be.
Are you good about that? Listening to your gut in general? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And I've usually found that my gut is right.
Oh yeah. Do you always, or do you like listen for messages in the universe at all? Like, something simple like I read, I'll make it relevant to this show. I'll read about an artist or somebody will refer me to them. And then and I may not know them or something. And then another guy will refer me. I'm like, okay, I got to call this person and get him on my show. Like, so I'm always open. I'm very open. You know, I try to let the universe sort of guide me. And if I'm hearing this twice, you know what, man, don't ignore it. Just do it.
No, absolutely. You know, I mentioned earlier when I started with Toby, I was the only guy out of Nashville, and the band was out of Oklahoma. So it was difficult. The travel was difficult. And some of that, I had to either drive to Oklahoma to meet the bus, or I had to fly into the first date out of my own pocket. You know, Toby wasn't the guy that he is now. He was like, he hired me. It was up to me to make the gig.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, so that was a little rough. Within 6 months, I had offers with two other prestigious bands. One was the Bellamy Brothers.
Oh, wow.
And the other one was with Tracy Lawrence. And those were, well, the Bellamys don't run out of Nashville, so it would have been a similar thing, but I think they do run their bus out of Nashville. And then Tracy Lawrence obviously was a wholly national thing. But 6 months into it, and I was offered those gigs, and the money was about the same. But my gut was to stay with Toby. I liked him. I liked his music. I liked the band. And even though the travel was inconvenient, I just didn't feel like leaving him for something else was the smart thing to do after only 6 months.
Yeah.
I wanted to play that out and see where it was going to go.
I think if something feels good, you really got to stick with it, whatever it is. My experience has been you really owe it to yourself to see it through. You know, if it feels right, because let's face it, not everything feels right. You know, so if you're fortunate to go in a direction where you're really comfortable, man, I think you really owe it to yourself to see something through. Yeah.
And like I said, I really like the music, and Toby, and he's got a really good work ethic too. And I just knew he was going to work. Yeah. And, the Bellamys are still out there, knocking it down too. And, one of the things that was really appealing with the Bellamys is, when I joined Toby, I'd been on the road for 10 years already. And Toby at that time was playing a lot of the same clubs and bars and stuff that I'd been doing for the last 10 years. The Bellamy Brothers were going to South America and Europe and Asia because, Let Your Love Flow was a huge international hit. So I just thought, man, if I'm going to keep touring, do I want to go back to these same clubs again, or do I want to go to Brazil and Peru and Germany and Italy and, with the Bellamy Brothers? So it was really appealing, and it was very tempting. But again, something in my gut told me to stay with Toby.
That's wild, man.
Yeah.
That's the song Dave Mason wrote, right?
Let Your Love Flow. I don't know who wrote that.
I think
it could be. It could be. That sounds right.
I interviewed Dave Mason. It was funny.
Oh, did you?
That was one of the few. I've had 350 interviews. That was one of the maybe two where I'm not a guy that gets starstruck or anything, but his music was so deeply embedded in me. It was just weird. Wait a minute. I'm sitting here talking to Dave Mason. I remember I had his album Alone Together. I took it out I bought it for $2 at used,
right.
Downtown in the Village. And I'm like, this doesn't make any sense, that I'm not talking because I listened to it 100 times, so it's just weird.
Yeah. I get that way sometimes. I've developed a friendship with Ted Nugent and we talk and it's funny. I've noticed with Ted, it's like he turns the switch off when we talk.
Oh, that's great.
And it's just us. And, but I still, anytime if we're on the phone or if we're in person and I walk away from the conversation, I'm like, that was Ted Nugent. I still do that.
Yeah.
I was like, we talk like we're buddies, but then I walk away from that and go, damn, that's Ted Nugent. Yeah. I mean, he was my idol growing up. And here I am, just talking to him about, hunting and fishing and just life in general.
Yeah. Do you know Dave Amato?
I do know Dave, yeah.
Dave has had so many nice things to say about Ted. He played with Ted for I think 3 years. And he said, and he goes, you know what? He goes, I hate that people bash Ted because let me tell you, he goes, I slept in his house. He woke me up and made me breakfast. Mm-hmm. Ted Nugent made me eggs and breakfast. And we sat down with his kids and he goes, he was a really nice guy. I don't care,
He's a great guy. My brother still lives up in the DC area, and Ted was playing Baltimore. And so my brother called me and he goes, hey, can you get me tickets to Ted Nugent? I said, I will get you tickets if I can go. So I looked at my schedule and I was available. So I flew up to Baltimore. My brother and I went to the show. We had a great time. We went backstage before and, visited with Ted a little bit. And Ted was like, I want you right in front of my amps. You need to be right there, front row. I want to look down and I want to see your face. That's right awesome. In front of my amp. So we went, we went to the show, then we went backstage after, and I was talking with Ted, and he goes, man, I don't know how much luggage you've packed, but I'm flying up to New York to do the Larry King show. And then I'm going up to do the State Fair. You guys are playing the State Fair, same day, different stage. And I'm playing before you are. So I'll get you in plenty of time. Why don't you come with me to New York, private jet, come up, do Larry King, and then we'll go on up to New York and I'll get you on stage with Toby in plenty of time. And I just thought, dude, what a sweetheart of a guy. Now, I said no. I know your fans, your listeners are going to be disappointed. And the reason I said no is because I only packed for that weekend. And when that was the first show with Toby, and I was going to be out for 2 weeks. If I was a smarter man, I would have just gone and bought clothes and hung out with Ted for the weekend. But instead, it's like, no, I said, Ted, I gotta go home. I got to repack and all this kind of stuff. But just for him to make that offer,
that's incredibly
just a sweetheart of a guy. Come with me and do Larry King, and then we'll go on up to New York and we'll just hang out.
I think that also says a lot about, like a true friend. That's really a very kind and a tremendous act of kindness, man. That's really,
just that he wanted to hang with me, and it wasn't like, okay, kid, you saw my show, you praised me, now get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
It was like, hey, no, come on, hang with me. We're gonna go up to New York and hang out a little bit.
That's awesome, man. Very cool.
Really cool. He's great. He's always been great.
Growing up in the Maryland area, did you get a chance to see Roy Buchanan?
I did see Roy Buchanan. I sure did.
Tell me about this, man.
Yeah, I saw him at the Warner Theater in DC. Yeah. He was amazing, just absolutely amazing. I mean, he just kind of took the blues to a new level, and it was never boring. I've seen Clapton 3 times. The first time I saw him, one of the best concerts I've ever seen. Second time I saw him, really good. Third time I saw him was when he was on his blues kick. And I was like, I can see guys down on Lower Broad, Nashville, play blues that well. And that sounds horrible. I love Eric Clapton. He's one of my idols. But Roy Buchanan, there was some excitement in his playing. Just really just amazing excitement in his playing.
Yeah, he's like no other. I mean, he's just I've seen him on some shows, and there's like some bootleg stuff out there of him that I've watched. I've watched everything. I own everything they just put out, and it's bootleg. But people have told me that he would turn around. Is that true? Like he didn't want anybody to see, because there's always a room full of guitar players, and like
I don't remember that. I don't remember him doing that. I really don't. I used to hear that about Eddie Van Halen before he came out with the finger tapping, that he used to always turn his back on those parts so that nobody could steal it from him before they got big. But I never heard that about Buchanan.
Yeah, I love Roy's stuff. I mean, I was just listening, like Someday the Messiah Will Come. That song, that long, slow blues. Oh, man, I just listened to it the other day, and it just cuts right. It's so guttural, man. It just, slices right through you.
Another incredible guy from the DC area is Danny Gatton.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And I never did see him play, but I love his playing. He talk about taking it to another level. I just don't. I mean, there's videos of him playing, and I look at what he's doing, and I try to emulate it. And I was like, no, can't do it.
No, those two guys
can't do it. I don't have the ability to do what he's doing.
Kind of sad. Both played tellies, both out of that area, and they both committed suicide pretty much.
Yeah,
I think, right?
That is sad, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah,
very sad. Really sad.
Yeah.
Are there guys that you met, players in Nashville, like early on when you first got there, that you're still buddies with today?
Yeah, a lot of them. Like I mentioned David James earlier. We're still, but he doesn't live here anymore. But we still stay in touch, and a lot of the players that I met early on, we still hang. And and as you kind of, after you're here for a while, you get to meet more and more guys, and generally stay in touch. I've known Johnny Garcia, who plays guitar with Garth, and he started out with Trisha way back. That was his first gig, was Trisha Yearwood when she first started. And I met Johnny back then, and he and I are still very good friends. And it's funny because he will tell people that Rick Eckhardt is the best guitar player on the road. And I generally tell people, if you really want to see the guy that does this to its best, go see Johnny Garcia play with Garth. So we both really have a great admiration for each other.
Very cool.
But yeah, I think you hang on to those friendships. Musicians is I can really only speak for Nashville, but we can relate to each other because we have similar life experiences. And so, you hang on to that. You hang on to that. These are guys that understand where I've been, what I'm doing, where I'm going. And people outside the business don't get that. I had somebody, I've been on the road 30 years, 20 of those with Toby, and I've played with a bunch of other artists, Shania Twain and and John Barry and Mel McDaniel and just tons and tons of people, Blake Shelton. And I had somebody, it seems like maybe it was 10 years ago, ask me when I was going to get a real job.
Are you kidding? Like somebody, like a non-musician, right?
Right. A non-musician. Say, well, when are you, this is all
like you've had like such an incredible career.
When are you going to get a real job? This has all been fun, but when are you going to get a real job? People don't understand that this is a real job. This is the hardest job I've ever had in my entire life, is being a musician, because you have to give it your all. And there's no time clock. You don't ever punch out.
Yeah. Right.
You're always on, you're always working, you're always creating. You're always trying to figure out how you can move forward and stay relevant and stay in the business. And it's harder, the older you get. Toby Keith will probably be my last touring artist.
Yeah, but he may tour another 20 years.
He may tour another 20 years. Thank God.
So that'd be a great gig.
Yeah. He's kind of modeled himself after guys like Willie Nelson, Merle Haggard, Dolly Parton, and they're all in their 70s still touring. So there's a good chance that he'll still be doing it another 15 or 20 years. But this is probably it for me. I'm too old for the new up and coming guy to want me on stage with him. Yeah. Doesn't matter how much experience I have or how good I play or anything like that. I'm too old. You don't want to put a 57-year-old guy on stage with a 22-year-old.
Yeah, I get you. It's what an arrogant thing for someone to say, isn't it? When are you going to get a real? Old? No, when are you going to get a real job?
Oh, that, yeah.
It's such an arrogant fucking statement. But
again, it's just they're probably their only experience with musicians is that it's a big party, and the guys that work at this level, it's a job. I'm in the musicians union, and it's as much a job. You see how much of a job it is, I think, when you interact with other guys that are in the union, because they're all people that are taking this very seriously and look at it as a career choice, and not this is what I'm doing because I don't want to work.
From my perspective, as a guy coming out of the business world, you're an entrepreneur. You're an entrepreneur in the music business that happens to play guitar, but this is by just my eyes. You're self-employed and you're a small business owner, and everything you just said is the same thing me and every other small business owner. You got to always figure out how to stay relevant, figure out, you have to be very adaptable to change. You have to be very open to thinking, okay, what's my next move, and work, always look for the, idea fodder, as to, and like you never shut down. It's always, from my perspective, it's no different than running any other small business.
That's exactly it. That's exactly what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. For someone to make a comment like that, that's
and you gotta make sure that they still want to call you.
Yeah.
People have to want to call you.
Which means you got to be cranking out great stuff all the time, man. And that's,
right.
And
always have to be on. And now these days, you can't even have a bad show. You can't, because everything is recorded. Everything is recorded. With some guy with a cell phone out there. If you play, if you butcher the Star Spangled Banner one night, it's all over YouTube, and that's the guy that you are. You're the guy that butchered the Star Spangled Banner. Yeah,
which that always, even long before I was involved with this project, I thought that was bad. It's one thing to criticize somebody if you're like another musician, maybe, but a lot of these people that criticize, they're like just guys like sitting in their mom's basement, or like we talked about before the call. It's like they're firing away on their computer because they can. I interviewed Johnny Hyland
Oh yeah, I love Johnny. I know Johnny.
Long time ago, and he said what happened was there were these people online that were like trolling the shit out of him. You know, you're fat. I mean, they were actually making fun of him because his vision. You know, he's legally blind, and then he's at some show. And someone comes running over to him and says, "Hey, can I have your autograph, Johnny?" And his wife notices the guy's badge, and it was the same name as the guy on this forum.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. And Johnny said, "Hey, man, why are you so mean to me online? And you want my autograph, and I'm happy to give it to you." And he goes, "Oh, the typical bullshit. Oh, I didn't mean it. The sun was in my eyes. The dog ate my homework, whatever, some shit like that."
Right.
I just I don't know. That shit's wrong.
Yeah, no, it is wrong. It is wrong. It's, I don't know why, but for some reason with the computer age that we're in now, it's so much easier. It seems, or people seem so much more willing to criticize than to praise. Yeah,
and it's stressful to criticize. For me, I find I never criticize anything. Like if I have nothing nice to say, I just don't say it. Not for that person. For me, I don't want the stress. Why would I take the time out? Like, what's in it for? What am I getting out of that?
No. Well, I think that's the ththing. I think a lot of these people they feel like they're getting something out of it. A lot of times, I think if you're a player, a novice or a beginner, I think sometimes they feel like if they're going to put down a guy like Johnny Highland, it elevates them. It makes their friends that are reading that go, well, he must know what he's talking about because Johnny Highland's amazing and this guy's dogging him, so he must be better.
Yeah.
I think that's what's going on in their head anyway. Obviously there's no truth to that.
Who the hell knows? Hey, man, tell me about top 2 or 3 sessions you've done and maybe a cool story from each one.
Well, I did one in '97 that won a Grammy, so that was really cool. That was with John Barry, and it was a various artists album where he sang. I think it was the Old Rugged Cross or something like that on a tribute to God, country music tribute to gospel, and that won a Grammy. So I've got a Grammy certificate hanging on my wall. Actually,
I see it, man.
There.
And I noticed I was going to ask you what that was. I didn't want to be like thinking it was creepy that I'm checking out like what your walls are. To be honest with you.
But so that was really cool. Because that was just another session. You just go in and you play your best, cool. And then it wins a Grammy. So that was really kind of cool. And I just did one Sunday, and I'm probably going to mention this because it's the most recent thing that I've done with a songwriter named Peter Gallinari, who's a wonderful keyboard player and actually an amazing singer. He sounds just like Dennis DeYoung from Styx.
Wow.
And if you looked at this guy, you would go, because I remember when I first met him, he would say, "Oh, yeah, I sing like Dennis DeYoung." And I looked at him and I went, "Yeah, you sing like Dennis DeYoung." And then I heard him and I was like, "Oh my God, you can close your eyes and you would swear you're listening to Styx." So anyway, so he wrote this song that he wanted to do a demo on, and we just did it. The thing that I loved about that was it was such an amazing collaboration between the players. And it was just me and Peter Gallinari, Sandy Gennaro, I'm not sure how to pronounce the last name, on the drums, yeah. And Dave Rowe, who I know you've had on the show, was playing bass. And everybody just really, because Peter sent us all an MP3 of a piano vocal demo that he did on it. So, there was no real direction. We had to create from scratch. And that was just really, it was really great. Just a collaboration between the players, I thought was outstanding. No egos, no bickering over. Everybody understood, where we were going and what we were trying to do with that song. So those are a couple of highlights.
In Nashville, do players ever walk into, it would blow me away to think that somebody would walk away into a setting in Nashville with studio guys with an ego, because it's like everybody in there is really, really like amazing.
I've seen it. I've seen guys that are full enough of themselves that they have a little bit of an ego when they come into a session. Yeah.
That's mind boggling in Nashville in particular. Because that's just really amazing. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, because in Nashville you can be replaced like that
in a heartbeat, and there's 10 guys right behind you, just as good as, if not better than you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that don't have the attitude,
right? That are incredibly humble.
Yeah, but I've seen it. But again, the top shelf guys, those are the guys that you don't get any ego from or attitudes. They know it. They know how to conduct themselves in a session.
Well, from talking to these guys, they all are aware of, hey, I'm in the service business. Mm-hmm. And my job is to provide service, not to, this isn't about me. It's not about my solo. It's about the person who's hiring me and how I could support them and, bring their vision to fruition in the best possible way.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you have to kind of approach it that way. I was you mentioned in my intro, last year I did this show at the War Memorial. It was a house party, and it was a really cool show. That they're still doing it, but I'm not involved with it anymore. About a half a dozen artists, and these would be big name artists would come out, and then up and comers and songwriters and stuff. Very entertaining show. I was part of the house band, so we'd have to learn. We learned as little as 8 songs, but as many as 14 songs. For a single show, and some, and there's a rehearsal in the afternoon only, and then there's the show. And at rehearsal, you're going to run through and hash out, any issues. And I remember working with one of the artists who wasn't really sure about this lead lick or intro lick that I was doing on the song, and so he was questioning it, and I said, well, this is exactly what's on the record that you sent. I said, I will play whatever you want me to play if you want to show me something else. But this is exactly what's on the record that you sent. And I think what the deal was is that he'd been out playing with other bands that were doing it different. Okay. And so he wasn't used to hearing it the way it was on the record. Yeah, sure. But my point on this is that, I was there to please him. I wasn't going to take a stand and go, well, this is the record. This is the way it's going to be done. I know better than you. Right. I was just like, I said, hey, if you want me to do something else there, I'll gladly do it. Just let me know what it is. But this is what was on the demo record that you sent us. So it was, I just laid it there, and he actually said, yeah, do that, but play it up an octave from there. And so that's what I did. And that was, we found a compromise that the artist was happy with, and it didn't matter to me. I would have lay down whatever he wanted. Yeah. We're there to make him happy.
Yeah, totally. Mm-hmm. Hey, how did you wind up working on TV show Nashville, and what was that like?
I loved working on the TV Nashville, but I don't know how I got called to do it. And it's funny because I talked to the other players. I met some amazing players on that show. And the great thing about that is they didn't bring in actors to act like they were playing guitar. And so you look like, the black-haired girls in that Robert Palmer video where they obviously don't know anything about the instrument they're playing. They brought in real musicians to so that they had people that were comfortable playing on stage and looked like they knew what they were doing with the instrument in hand. And so I met some amazing players, and I asked all those guys, I was like, how did you get this gig? How'd you get this gig? Nobody knew. Everybody they just sent me an email, wanted to know if I was interested in being on the show. And that was the exact same story with me. I got an email first season saying, hey, we're looking for a guitar player for the show. Can you do it? And I wasn't able to do it. And I sent them my bio and a picture and all that. I said, I really would love to be a part of this show. Please contact me again when you need another player. I couldn't do it because I have a schedule conflict. I was out with Toby. And then the next time they sent, same thing, couldn't do it. The third time they sent, I could do it, and then it turns out they didn't need me. So the fourth time they sent, I could do it, and they needed me. The cool thing about that is I feel that if I had accepted any one of those first 3 offers, it would have been a one and done. It would have been like, okay, I'm playing in this scene, done, move along. The one that I accepted was for a new character that was coming onto the show, Luke Wheeler, who was, if you watch the show, he was actually sort of a mixture of Toby Keith and Tim McGraw, a guy that had been around for a while, still having a great career, still having hits. So he became a regular part of the show. He became Raina James's fiance. And so he ended up working for 4 seasons on the show. So every time that he was on the show and they needed a performance, I got the call. So I ended up doing about a dozen episodes. And in one of them, I actually got dialogue. They had one episode where they needed somebody to be band leader and actually speak lines. And the pay was stupid for that. It was just stupid for me to speak 3 lines as you know, I'd never acted before in anything where I had lines. And it was great. I got my own dressing trailer.
There you go, man. For the week.
And I had a stand-in. I actually had a stand-in. And the funny thing about that is that the guys in the band, we had been working together for 3 years already, for 3 seasons. And then we're shooting that scene, and my stand-in comes up to fill in for me. Those guys had to still stay in place. And I'm going and sitting down and, you know, kicking back, having a drink and, you know, just hanging out and waiting for them to call me back up to shoot the scene.
Oh, he had to just do it. They just had. Why did your stand-in come in if you were there though?
Because that's just the way they do it. The stand-in goes in to set up the shot.
Oh, okay.
You know I mean, so the stand-in never spoke the lines, but the stand-in had to set up the shot. They need a body there.
Okay, I guess
to set up the shot while they're changing the lighting and the camera angles and all that. But the other guys in the band had to be. They don't get stand-ins. They had to be.
That's so funny, man.
So it was kind of funny, yeah. And then I had my own dressing room and stuff like that. So it was fun to do. You know, we shot that scene for. I bet we shot for. It was 3 lines of dialogue, and I bet we shot it for 2 hours, 3 hours, something like that.
Crap.
Yeah, they have to do, you know, different angles from behind, from the front, from the sides, and different audio takes. And I think I learned a lot doing that show. The actor that played Luke Wheeler, Will Chase, super nice guy, and we were shooting a scene where he wanted me to come over to him on the intro of the song and play off each other. I was playing his lead lick, and he was, you know, we were just kind of rocking out. And he goes, "Can you come over?" Because there was a wah pedal solo. So he was, you know, musical enough to know. He said, "Can you come over to me on the intro, or are you tied to the wah pedal?" And I said, "No, I can come over to you." So we get ready to shoot, and he goes, "Oh, and remember that thing I told you about my balls?" And I was like, "Your balls?" And then it was like, "Action." And I go over to him, and he looks at me, and he just goes, "Balls," like that. And so we both start laughing. And so the camera captured us having a great time on stage together. And I just thought, you know, that's one of those little acting tricks, I think, that I just picked up from him.
That's very cool.
There was another scene between him and Chip Eston. They were actually lover rivals. They, you know, because Chip's character Deacon loved Raina James, but the Luke Wheeler character was engaged to them. So there was a little tension between the two characters. So they were shooting the scene that I was in. I was just kind of in the background. And where apparently earlier in the show, the Deacon character got punched by the Luke Wheeler character, got punched in the face. So they're doing this scene where Deacon says to Luke, and he goes, if you ever lay a hand on me again, I'm going to slap that so-called smile off your face. That was the line. They shot this thing again, you know, different angles, 6 times. You ever touch me again, I'm going to slap that so-called smile off your face. Then they're shooting the reverse angle where they're getting the reaction from Luke Wheeler to the comment. And Chip Eston goes, "You fucking touch me again, I'm going to knock your goddamn head off." And so the reaction was to that. So they got this amazing reaction. And it's funny because in the scene, Will Chase turns from that and goes off stage. And since I'm his guitar player, you know, I'm obviously siding with him in the fight. And so I go with him, and we get off set, out of shot, and he turns to me and he goes, "Boy, that got my fucking blood boiling." And I just thought, that this is great. This is acting tips. They weren't going to use that bit of audio. They already had the audio they needed, but the reaction that they got was from that statement.
That's really cool. Really clever.
Yeah. I just thought, man, these guys are good. These guys know their shit.
That is really cool, man. And on that note, if anybody's looking to hire somebody, I think Rich is probably very available.
Yeah, that's right. I would love to be on the show The Ranch.
That'd be cool.
It's a Netflix series with Ashton Kutcher, and it's very, you know, kind of, you know, right wing suburban, you know, little town, and and it's a funny show, and I'd love to have a small part on that show. I'd love to just kind of do something and on there. But I mean, I don't aspire to be an actor, but it was fun. I enjoyed it. I understand why actors like to do theater. You always hear actors say they like to do theater because filming a series is like watching paint dry. I mean, it takes really so long, and you keep saying the same line of dialogue over and over and over, and then the 45 minutes for them to set up the next shot, and then you do that same line of dialogue again, and you have to keep the energy the same.
Yeah,
and do it, and it's hard. And if you're doing a play, you get immediate response from the audience. You get to do the whole thing in real time, as you go through. I see why they would enjoy that more.
Yeah, and there's no repetition of having to do it over and over and over. It's very natural and back and forth. Yeah, that makes sense. Dude, I'm smelling serious plan B here.
Yeah, well, I could always be, some old guy.
Ashton, if you're listening, somebody give this man a call.
Yeah, whoever's doing casting on that show, I'd love to be on there.
You've been involved in so many different projects, man. Would it be possible to say, okay, what's the top 3 musical experiences for you?
Yeah, that would be hard. But I would think getting to work with Derek St. Holmes, who was Ted Nugent's guy, sang Stranglehold and all that stuff. I've done some work with him. Always love working with him. He's another guy that I've developed a friendship with. But just getting on stage with him, first time we met was at a Paul Reed Smith concert at the NAMM show. They were putting on a show, and I heard Derek was going to be on it. And so I told him, I said, I don't care what you have me do, but I would love to do something with Derek St. Holmes because I was just such a huge, fan of his music. So the first time, and we did Stranglehold.
Doing Stranglehold with Derek, that's got to be almost a little surreal, no?
Yeah, and I didn't expect it to be that
voice.
grand. I just thought, we'll get up and we'll do, something with, and Derek's on it. But here's Derek singing, still every bit as good as he did back in the day, and I was playing the Nugent stuff note for note, just right off the record, and we just kind of formed a friendship from that. But that was really exciting, just that first experience. And then we were playing the Staples Center. We sold out Staples Center. I think it's 22 or 24,000 seats out in L.A. And the band was having a great night. Toby was having a great night. And then in that afternoon, they told us that Merle Haggard and Jerry Lee Lewis might be coming out to join us on the show.
Wow!
And they both showed. And so Haggard comes out, and we did Walking on the Fighting Side of Me. I think we did, and a couple of his songs, 2 or 3 of his songs, maybe Working Man Blues or something. I mean, everybody knows all the Haggard stuff, so it was pretty easy to pick that up. And then Jerry Lee Lewis comes out, plays piano with his Great Ball of Fire with us, and that's just something I'm never gonna forget.
That's pretty cool, man.
Being on stage with those two guys the same night in front of a crowd like that. Yeah, so it was really great. And then I did some stuff with Steven Tyler and Joe Perry, and that's just amazing. When you're listening to Steven Tyler's voice in your ear monitors while you're playing guitar is pretty thrilling.
Let me ask you something about Joe Perry. He's got such a unique style. I mean, it's kind of like blues rooted, but I don't know. His style is very unique, and his note selection is extremely unique unto him. And I have really not heard anybody sort of do that. Did you get any insights as to what the hell he does? I mean,
no, you know what? I really didn't. But I'll tell you a funny story. He and I were talking one of the shows that we did, and we were just visiting and just kind of getting to know him, and he was playing, had a little Marshall half stack, and he just bought this funky ass old guitar, I don't even remember what it was. It might have been like an old, Dan Electro or Jerry Jones something. It was just one of these little funky, and he's playing it, and we were just kind of talking about, the tone and all that. And Steven Tyler comes in, and he goes, Joe, that's pretty loud, don't you think? And Perry goes, without missing a beat, he goes, well, if it's too loud, somebody will say something. And Tyler leans into him and he goes, well, I'm saying something like that. And Perry didn't even pretend to turn down. He was just like, gang, 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 just kept playing. And I was just like, boy, I've always heard those guys were like brothers, but boy, they sure are.
They sound like an old married couple.
Yeah,
man.
yeah.
That's what
I can see me doing that with my brother.
That's so funny. That's cool, man.
But they were great. They were great. Now I worked with Joe a couple of times. We also did it was a televised tribute to Elvis, where Toby and his band played what was it? Mystery Train. Which is one of Elvis's really early recordings with Joe, and he was great, just so great to work with on that. And he just turns it on when he gets out on stage. He's just amazing. What
were you doing with him and Steven? What project was that?
That was a Super Bowl pre-show party on CMT, and it was a lot of Sammy Hagar was on that. Nugent was on that. That was the first time I met Nugent, actually. Sammy Hagar, him, Willie Nelson was on that, and Steven and Joe came out and did that as well. So it was, and our band pretty much backed everybody.
You were almost like the house band for that.
Yeah,
that's cool. Yeah. Wow,
so we played behind all those guys. Yeah,
what a cool opportunity, man.
Yeah,
wow, yeah, that's really sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah,
man. So you grew up in Maryland. What was your childhood like?
It was really very normal. Really, I mean. The town I grew up in was Riverdale, Maryland, and it was like Mayberry. I mean, really small. We lived at the foot of the Calvert Mansion, and that's where Lord Calvert lived in Maryland. And the first telegraph message was sent from the Calvert Mansion way back when, and it still stood. And at that time, it was just our playground. And now they've got it. It's a historical preserved monument, but. We used to just play hide and seek, on the grounds there, and it had a really cool sort of 3-tiered hill that we used to go sleigh riding down in the wintertime. So just really normal childhood. I mean, all the kids on the street, that was like family. We kind of raised each other. Yeah. We all we played together every Christmas. We'd get a call from, our friends down the street. What'd you get for Christmas? So it was a really cool way to grow up. Just real small town vibe to it. Nothing too exotic.
I know you had a brother. You said is that it? Just you and your brother, or was there more of you guys?
I actually, family's complicated. I grew up with 2 brothers. Okay. I have an older and a younger, and we all played music together growing up. But I found out later in life that I had other siblings that I didn't know about.
Holy cow! Yeah.
So
I always like almost not admire, but like I can't manage like the one situation I have, and I know a lot of guys are like, they've got like 3 or 4 things going, plus they're married. And I'm like, how the fuck do you do that, man?
Right.
I struggle with the one, and it's like nothing going on. I can't like really seem to, it's work, and like, I'm always like, wow, that's wild. God.
Yeah.
What kind of work did your folks do?
My mom sold wall-to-wall carpeting and Oriental rugs for a department store, and it was really, it's funny to think how times have changed, because I mean, she worked only in the rug department, and there were like maybe 3 other salesmen in the rug department as well in a department store. Wow. So there were other people that worked jewelry, and other people that worked clothing. So she worked the rug department there.
That's wild.
And my dad worked in computers for his entire life since the late 50s, when they took up the entire basement. There was punch cards and tubes, all that. That's where he started and worked. He was like a systems analyst for a computer firm in New York for his entire life. Retired from that.
Wow.
So that was it. Just regular, blue collar jobs.
Did you have any like low points of your career? And if you had them, how did you get through them?
I worked with John Barry for 3 years, and completely out of the blue got let go from that gig. December, when we were off tour, and waiting for the tour season to kick back in, and I get a call from him that he was letting me go, and I actually literally went into the best I can recognize as a depression. I think people that are clinically depressed, that's a very serious issue. And I don't think this was it. But I didn't want to play anymore after that because I felt like I'd been fooling myself. Like I'm not really good enough to do this, or why would I be getting fired from this job that I loved so much for the last 3 years? So that was really, really hard. I didn't touch guitar for like 6 months.
What did you do? Wow.
I just, like I said, it was wintertime. So I just, I puttered around the house and just, I didn't work. I was married at the time, so my wife was still working. Okay. So we were fine. Our finances were good, but I didn't work. I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything. And then I went to a function. My wife was working. She worked in the music business, and she was working for Garth Brooks at the time. And we went to a function that Garth was having, and I hadn't touched a guitar in forever, and everybody wanted me to get up and play. And I got up and played it, and I was fucking horrible. And I was like, I can't do this. I'm supposed to be playing guitar, and I just embarrassed myself in front of my peers, basically. So I started kind of playing again a little bit, but that was the lowest point, I think, for me, was getting fired from that job. And then having to deal with the emotional ramifications of that.
Did he tell you why he let you go?
He gave me some bullshit reasons. Told me that I didn't play in tune and that I was reluctant to learn new material.
Wow, that's not easy to hear.
Yeah,
even if it's not true, it's not easy to hear.
Yeah, when I started with him, I was given 3 songs to audition with. I learned 2 albums worth of stuff. And showed up at the audition knowing everything he had ever recorded.
Wow.
And he's going to let me go, saying that I was reluctant to play in tune, or reluctant to learn new material. Yeah. And the not playing in tune thing, I have no idea where that comes from.
So he's just saying something to
saying something. Yeah, obviously there was some sort of personality issues there with me, is what it was. And I don't know if he was trying to spare me. John, you didn't spare me. that what you said hurt worse than if you had said, I just don't like you.
Yeah. That is one negative thing about Nashville. And I think, and everybody, I have tons of listeners here, so please don't take this the wrong way. In the South in general, I think people are more reluctant to be direct. And
I grew up with that directness. I was born in New York and grew up in Maryland. And even though Maryland, you're technically kind of starting to get into the South,
it's the Atlantic.
It still had more of those northeastern values. And that was something that I had to adjust to when I came here, is the smile in your face but stab you in your back kind of thing that can happen here. Yeah. You don't always know where you stand with somebody is really the best way that I can put it. You don't know where you stand because they're going to be nice to you, to your face, but then they're not.
Yeah. It's an adjustment for sure, man. And I think it's just people are taught not to be what they perceive as confrontational, what you or I might perceive as, oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Like
I think for them it is the trying to avoid the confrontation.
Yeah.
I think that's the approach. I don't think there's any it's not malicious.
No, there's no malice.
But that's just kind of the way they do it. It's like, I'm not going to be mean to you to your face.
Right. Whereas with me, it's like, don't piss on my back and tell me it's raining out, man. It's okay if you don't like me or whatever. That's cool, man. It's all right.
But me moving here was an adjustment for the community too, because people weren't used to, and I'm sure that happens with all people that come from up north down here. There is an adjustment because we're so used to being more direct, being more honest, and upfront. And then they don't know how to take it, and they think you're being mean, or they think you're being an asshole,
right?
Or whatever.
Well, this guy's rude, and you're like me. I'm trying to be honest with you, which is like the opposite of rude. Yeah, I know.
I've found some happy middle ground, I think, with that.
You have to. I mean, it's the world's not going to bend for you or me or anybody else, so you got to find some way to strike the middle and just communicate as best you can. But so what do you think got you out of that that kind of depression that you were in?
I got called at the end of that 6 months to go play with Shania Twain, and I was like, I've got to step it up. And just the fact that I got called to go work with Shania, I think had a lot to do with bumping me out of it. It's like, okay, there is life after that.
Yeah.
I am going to be able to move forward with this. I wasn't the right guy for Shania. They were looking for really strong vocalists. They loved me, loved my playing. I got to work a lot with Mutt Lange, which was really amazing. But I wasn't the right guy for the gig because I didn't have the vocal abilities that they wanted. And I don't have any ego about my vocals. I can throw in a decent harmony from time to time, but I'm a guitar player. I'm not a singer. And they wanted all strong vocalists in the band, so they continued to look. But I did end up working with her. I did some television shows with her. So I do have that, on my resume. I did play with Shania, although very briefly.
Dude, I'm hearing TV over and over again, man.
Yeah, more TV.
Yeah, I'm hearing TV. This is Plan B, bro.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But so then after Shania, what happened?
After Shania, I went to Toby.
Oh, so this.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Isn't it funny how that works? Here you are 6 months earlier. You're like, like the doldrums of all doldrums. Yeah. And then like you're playing in front of 80,000 people with Toby Keith. Fuck. Yeah. That's amazing how this whole thing.
So it was over that winter is when I was, down and out. And then, in July, I started with Toby.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah. And it's been, that was the best move. And that's, it's what I've tried to learn from that is that even those setbacks, you can learn from those setbacks and you can regroup from anything and continue to move forward. Yeah. Because I know me and, the loyalty that I feel like I've always given to the artists that I've played with, I would still be with John now 20 years later. Yeah. I'd probably be working at Lowe's Monday through Friday and working occasional weekends with him. But my loyalty was to him, which is part of the reason why it hurt so much when he fired me. I still have that same loyalty to Toby, but I recognize that, if John didn't let me go, I wouldn't be with Toby now. I wouldn't have played with Shania. I wouldn't be with Toby for 20 years and doing all the great things that I've done with him. So that failure, with semi air quotes, I was able to turn into a success, by just keep pushing forward and moving on and I moved on to bigger and better things. So really him letting me go was doing me a favor. I just didn't see it at that time as being a favor.
Well, you can't connect the dots moving forward. That's the problem, and you never know where, like you said, what's going to happen after that. And it usually turns out, you never know the reason why that happened, quote unquote reason why, but
Yeah.
Hey man, so that being said, if you can go back and give advice to your younger self, assuming you're open to it, what advice would you have given yourself that you think would have made your life easier? Either, musically, professionally, personally, and any kind of advice.
I just think that I'm actually, you may not tell it now because I've worked on it a lot. I'm actually kind of introverted. And I think that if I could have gone back and talked to my younger self, I would tell him to be more open to people and not so standoffish. And that was just me not wanting just being uncomfortable with the interaction. But sometimes that's taken as being a jerk or being, conceited or whatever. It was never intended that way.
Sure.
It's just me being uncomfortable with new people. And I've learned to work through that and get past that. I still feel it every once in a while, but I'm hoping that it doesn't come across as that anymore.
Yeah.
I try to make myself go and introduce myself to new people and when I'm in those situations. Especially if I'm at a function with other musicians and stuff like that. I always try to, if there's somebody there that I don't know, I always try to introduce myself and not be the guy standing in the corner who looks like he doesn't want to, he's too good for everybody in the room.
Yeah. You know what? It's, I have to tell you, that is probably 80% of the players I interview have that same thing, that they're by nature very
Is that right?
Yeah. And, if you think about it, you play guitar. What is involved in that? Well, you have to sit alone in your room for like 12 hours a day for about 10 years. It's not, and you go out once in a while to play, but that whole thing is very conducive to, introversion.
Yeah.
So I totally get that. That being said, man, I would never have thought you're an introvert, man.
Thanks.
You're super. I was like, as soon as we started talking, I was like, damn, this is going to be great. This guy can talk, So
no, it's something that I've had to work on. It really is. And, and I've had a lot of years of working on it. So
he's working,
but I'm still aware of it. And I still recognize it in social situations where I get a little uncomfortable. It's still there.
Rich, you're doing a good job. So it's all good.
Thanks.
All righty. So let's talk about gear for a few minutes, Rich. As far as guitars, what's your go-to guitar right now, and what other 2 or 3 guitars would round out your top few?
For quite a while now, my go-to has been a PRS McCarty. I have a couple of those, and they actually made one for me that I designed the artwork on it. It's a standard McCarty, but the face of it I designed myself. They actually approached me about doing like a flag guitar because of Toby's patriotic side. And I was like, the flag guitar has been done. So I said, can I design something? And so I actually came up with it. It's a military camo, and that kind of mutes into a part of a flag.
That's cool.
So it almost kind of looks like you've peeled away some of the camouflage, and underneath it is an American flag.
That's very cool, man.
If you can picture that. Yeah. So that was and then the fret markers were bob wire. So I did. I designed all of that, and they did a great job producing that for me. It's just the one, but that's my main. And then I've also got a Les Paul that was in the Nashville flood that survived, and I still play it. And I think it sounds better now than it did before it sat in the murky water for 5 days. So that's a big go-to, and I get more compliments on that guitar after a show on that Les Paul. I finish up the night with it, so maybe that's the last thing in people's heads. But people go, "Man, that Les Paul just sounds amazing."
Is that the Burst?
It's a Burst.
Yeah, I've seen. Yeah. That's when I see. What year is that?
It's a 2002. It's relict mostly from a lot of play and from being in the flood. The paint started peeling off and all this kind of stuff, and my guitar tech and I just decided it looks really, really cool now. So we just left it. And there was a company called U.S. Masters that was making Fender-esque guitars back in the early 90s, and they're defunct now. But they made some good guitars, and I've got my Telly that I use for the more country stuff with Toby is my other go-to guitar. It's actually got humbuckers in it. I put Joe Barden pickups in it, and I think it just really sounds great. It's humbuckers, but it's still that's my Telly sound. I've never been big on the thin kind of Telly sound. It's just never been my sound.
I'm the same way, and I think like the guys who like that, they also play into that. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And I'm the same way. I prefer a humbucker sound, and I prefer the who did Joe Glazer fix that Les Paul after the flood?
And I sent it back to Gibson. The Gibson custom shop took care of it. Yeah.
Oh, it was a custom shop. Okay, great. That's really cool, man.
Yeah. That's great. And then I sent some of my PRSs that were damaged in the flood back to PRS, and they took care of it for me. So I did lose some. Some of them, my acoustics that were in the flood, all just fell apart. Mm-hmm. They just fell apart. They were unsalvageable. But some of the electrics survived and some did not. It's funny that I had a swamp ash, a guitar made out of swamp ash, and it didn't do well in the flood. You would think, hey, it's swamp ash. It must have been in the water at some point.
And it didn't do well.
It didn't do well from the flood. But everything that was mahogany, the mahogany really held up well. So the Les Paul, the McCarty, things like that, they all did well in the flood.
Man, I've never played a PRS guitar, but I've spoken to so many players that really love them, that they're so versatile and they're
versatile and consistent. You can go into Guitar Center and pick up a McCarty, and it'll play just like the one that I have. There's not a lot of, there's not a lot of variance. They're very high standards when they go through. I've done a walkthrough at their factory, and they have 6 points in the construction of the guitar where it's inspected, and at any one of those 6 points, it can be taken over to a bandsaw and cut in half if it doesn't meet the inspection.
Man, that's a simple. You think Gibson would do something like that? Maybe the new Gibson will do something like that. I don't know, but there's so much variance with the Gibsons, man.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what comes out of the change at Gibson.
Yeah, I'm actually going to contact them. The takeover group KKR. That's what they do. I want to see if I can get them on here as their. Now the new Gibson, like, come on here. So
that'd be a wonderful interview.
Yeah. I've got a letter getting ready to go out to them this week, as a matter of fact.
Yeah,
funny enough.
Cool.
Any cool stories behind how you acquired any of your guitars?
I have one a guitar that's called the Rocket that we were playing the Sturgis Biker Rally, and they were actually auctioning this guitar off. And it's an interesting guitar. It's a big body thing. It's fiberglass. It looks like the fuel tank of a motorcycle with a guitar neck sticking out of it. And it's got the speedometer and everything on it, And it's a really interesting a guy named Rockin' Rod McKenzie designed the guitar, and he was trying to build a business on it. So he was auctioning that one off, and it was a weird thing. The guy that won the auction, I think it went for $5,000 or $6,000.
Wow.
Yeah, and he didn't come to get the guitar. So they ended up doing this whole auction thing. The guitar was bought by a guy for $5,000, and then he didn't pick it up. So they still had the guitar. They didn't get the $5,000. That really kind of sucks for the charity. I don't remember what the charity was, but in order to help promote it, I played the guitar on the encore right before the auction. So it was like, you just saw Rich playing the guitar, and we're going to auction that off. So that's how I was introduced to Rod and the guitar. Well, several years later, Rod comes to a show, and he's got the guitar with him, and he goes, you were such a great help with this guitar. I've been taking it around everywhere. I have gotten dozens and dozens of autographs on this guitar, and I want you to have it. So I look at the guitar, and on the back of it, Joe Walsh is on there, Bruce Springsteen is on there.
Wow.
Just all these heavy hitters in the music business. He'd been running it around to concerts, getting everybody to sign it, and he gave it to me.
That's so. Do you have it in that room there? Is it handy?
No, it's not handy, actually. It's actually locked away.
That's really cool, man.
I figured it might contribute to my retirement someday.
It might, man. If you get all those guys' signatures on it, man, that's a nice little chunk of change on reverb or something like that.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's such an interesting guitar. The inlay is gold leaf. And the things were just – I don't think he makes them anymore because they were too expensive to make. He had to sell them, for so high. I think the guy was actually getting a deal at $5,000. That's probably what Rod had in it to make it. But that's just kind of an interesting story how I got that one.
That is cool. Does this guy make guitars anymore at all?
I don't think he does. No, you know what? The last time I talked to him, he was making an acoustic.
Rockin' Rod McKenzie.
He is doing something with the chambering that makes it, a much louder than a normal acoustic. And he said, I'm really anxious for you to check it out. So one of these days I'm going to have him send me one so I can just kind of mess around with it.
That's cool, man. That's a good story.
I think he's using the Bose acoustic wave machine.
Sure.
I think he's using that in theory on the inside of the guitar to help amplify the sound acoustically without having to plug it in.
I've interviewed some luthiers, man. It's a tough to make guitars full time is a tough.
I would imagine
because of what you said, the amount of money they have into it, and then the cost and these guys are not marketers, so they can't get they don't know how to do that. And it's just like, and they don't know how to differentiate their product. So it's hard to get more than, $2,000 for it. They don't know. They just don't know how to do that.
That's difficult at any level. People, I think the price point for the average consumer on a guitar is like $800. And, and a good Les Paul is going to cost you $3,000.
Yeah.
So it's tough. It's tough to meet that market.
Yeah, really tough for these guys.
Yeah.
And man, this is a tough question. Who's your favorite guitar player besides you?
Yeah. I'm certainly not my favorite guitar. I'm way down on the list of my favorites.
I know.
I grew up, a huge fan of Ted Nugent, and I just think he's one of the greatest rock and roll guitar players ever. And a lot of, I love Steve Vai, and they're very different, two of them. Steve Vai is, so technically proficient that, he's got to be from another planet, but Nugent just is very passionate and in his playing and always the right notes, and he's still really good and he's 67, I think 68. And I try to go see him play every year when he comes around. But he's just so good. Yeah. He just really is good. But I also love Pat Metheny, Brent Mason, Jeff Beck has been a favorite for a lot of years. Vince Gill, Chet Atkins, going back a ways. The first time I listened to Chet Atkins, a friend of mine's father played the record for me. He played, his son played, his son and I were friends. And I listened to it and I was like, well, that's wonderful, but that's like what? How many guys is that? Was that like 3 guys? He goes, no. No, that's just Chet by himself. This is a solo record. And I was like, you got to be shitting me. This is one guy playing by himself. Completely floored me.
That's cool.
Yeah, but I've a lot of influences, a lot of. I don't really have a favorite so much, but those guys are certainly all high on the list. Nugent being, I think, at the top.
Very cool
of the list for me, yeah, just because of his passion in his playing.
Man, it's so many people hate on Ted though, man. It's terrible, man.
I know.
I don't know. That's a whole separate conversation, but yeah, it's unfortunate because he's a tremendous player. And man, look at the guitar he's playing. He's playing a freaking Birdland, yeah. Which is, how great does he? It's. Look what he's doing, man.
It certainly wasn't designed for the type of music that he's playing, the Birdland, but he's created such a unique. I'm surprised that Gibson has not done a Ted Nugent signature series Birdland.
Yeah. Well, maybe I don't know. But I know a lot of guys that they made guitars for that because of the old management. They just didn't do them right. Like I think we mentioned Greg Martin from the Headhunters. Mm-hmm. He's got a signature guitar. Now that guy. That's all he plays too. He doesn't, like most guitar players have a bunch of guitars. Greg only plays his 58, he doesn't bring the 58 out, but he brings his, and they cut it out. They stopped making it. Like, why wouldn't you say, hey man, you're on the road, I don't know, probably 75 to 100 times a year. You're always out. You're great on social media. You're always playing this Gibson. We're going to keep cranking these out and we'll market it. I just don't get that at all. It's just stupid.
Yeah. I try to be, very conscientious of my endorsements. I remember back when I was a kid, the back page of Guitar Player magazine, I used to read Guitar Player religiously, and the back page was Eric Clapton standing in a smoky environment with 3 Music Man, 812, 2 412 cabinets, and the Music Man head on top. He had 3 of those. And just the ad itself was so cool. And I thought, man, if Clapton is playing that guitar or those amps, that's the amp for me. And I have one. I have I still have it. I bought it in 1977. I still have it. But to me, that spoke volumes about the power of endorsing products. So I always try to stay very conscientious of that. And, because I know I'm hoping anyway that I'm making some impact. And that, kids are seeing me play my McCarty on stage and they go, hey, that's the guitar Rich is using. I want that sound. That's the guitar I should be playing. So I don't take it very, very lightly, the endorsement thing. So I'm very conscious of that. And I know that I've seen some issues before when I was heavily involved with Gibson. The Aerosmith played I think it was either Thanksgiving Day or it was the Super Bowl. And they had just done a signature series, Les Paul with Joe. And he played the Super Bowl with a Gretsch guitar. And of course it upset everybody and it's, I don't think it's any secret that, the Super Bowl is pre-tracked. because of the slap back and the mixing and the rush to get an entire concert set up.
So you mean they record that beforehand? So they're recorded. Oh, I didn't know that. So
beforehand, and then you're pantomiming. Well, you remember the Red Hot Chili Peppers got into some hot water with that because they, I guess, were opposed to the fact that they had to pre-record, and so they didn't plug any wires into their guitars. And there's a close-up with nothing plugged in to Flea's bass, and so it was so it raised a lot of questions. Why are they? But they always pre-track those things. And it's just for the consistency of getting a good mix, because you have to throw everything together so quick. And so that it's pre-tracked. So he could have held anything in his hand.
Wow.
He could have held a tennis racket and it would have sounded just as good. So why not play your signature?
Yeah, that's kind of weird
on the show and give the love to the people that are giving you some love.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I see that. I see this a lot while I'm at concerts or while I'm watching things on TV, and I always wonder, like, man, doesn't he have a line with Gretsch? Why isn't he? Or doesn't he have a line with Gibson? Why is he playing something like that? I never get that. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, unless he was just trying to be true to the tone, because like when I was on the show Nashville, they wanted us playing, the guitar in our hands that was tracked on the recording. They didn't want you up there with a Strat that clearly sounded like a Les Paul. So if it was a Les Paul on the recording, we held a Les Paul. So he may have just trying to be true to that. He probably tracked with that Gretsch. So that was the guitar that he's going to hold in his hands for that performance.
Yeah, I'd be hard pressed to think that the people at the Super Bowl are even going to think of something like that.
Yeah.
They're thinking of how can we get this over and done with and get back to the game. I mean, with as little chaos as possible. That's probably what they're thinking.
Well, and that contributes to why they pre-track that stuff, because it's just a big undertaking to throw together in a 2.5 minute commercial break, and then you come out and you got to do your performance. So you pre-track, you come out. You perform to the tune or tunes that you're doing, and you drag everything off. We did I can't remember, we either did a Super Bowl pre-show or it was a Thanksgiving Day, and we had Willie Nelson come out, and there's like 3 or 4 parts to the stage, and they have to bring it all together and throw the gear up on it, and we go. There's not a whole lot of time, and they put it together, but it didn't fit. And there was like a gap in the stage about 8 or 10 inches. And so we were all trying to make sure that Willie knew that gap, the last thing we needed was for him to walk up on stage and step in a hole and go down. So we were like, just be careful, come around behind me, and all this, and we don't want you in that hole. So I mean, things go together pretty quickly for those Super Bowl appearances.
Well, are there any you've played with loads of people? Can you talk about maybe a couple of guitarists you've really enjoyed jamming with, and maybe one or two you'd like to jam with that you haven't?
I tell you who I played with that thrilled me to no end was Noki Edwards from The Ventures.
Yeah, wow, that's interesting, man.
I got to do a thing with him, and it's actually a pretty cool story. I mean, Walk Don't Run was one of the first songs I ever learned how to play, the old Ventures tune, and this was 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago. Noki passed away about a year ago, about a year and a half ago. But I mean, we became fast friends. I mean, we hadn't planned on rehearsing, and it was just going to be me and Noki playing. And I was called and said, "Hey, Noki's never met you. He'd like to rehearse with you beforehand." I said, "That's reasonable. I'll come in early, meet him, and rehearse." And so I went over and said hello, and I said, "Yeah, I'm really excited to be, doing this with you, playing Walk Don't Run." And I said, "Do you want to do the 65 version of Walk Don't Run, or do you want to do the earlier version of Walk Don't Run?" And he just kind of shrugged his shoulders. He goes, "I don't know." I said, "Well, let's do the 65 version because the rhythm guitar carries that a lot more than the drums. So I think we can get by, a little easier with just the two of us playing without a drummer that way." And he said, "Okay." And then we never went over it. We never touched it. I think I earned his confidence.
Yeah. Do you want the 65 version? Yeah. That's pretty.
By stepping in and knowing the difference and all that. And I said, "Just think of me as your Don Wilson for the day. I'm just going to be here playing rhythm." And it actually worked out. Tom Bresch got up and jammed with us on that too, and we also had a percussionist came up and played as well. So we ended up kind of putting a band together last minute, but that was a thrill. And then he asked me, he was doing a Chet Atkins convention later that year. He came back into Nashville, and he called me up and said, "Hey, you want to come play with me on this thing?"
Wow.
And I was like, "Yeah, I do." And it was just a blast, just getting to know him and kind of, becoming a friend of his, because his music meant so much to me growing up as a kid.
That's great.
And as far as who I'd like to play with, I used to always say Jeff Beck, but that's a very self-serving answer. Yeah, I'd love to get on stage with Jeff Beck because that'd be a nice little feather in my cap. But Jeff Beck doesn't need me on stage with him. At all. That's the Last thing he needs is another guitar player up there. I'd like to play with Keith Richards because I think Keith and I could make some good music together.
This is really weird. I was at a just went backtrack to Noki. I interviewed somebody, and I just drawn a blank, that actually saved his life when they were in Japan. He got sick. And they either called a doctor or he needed a Heimlich maneuver. And this guy actually said, and I'm just drawing a blank who it was. They were very good friends. But I was at dinner with a player who was in town this weekend, and he had some friends locally. And he started talking about my show or something. And this woman says that she did like catering for a bunch of guys. I said, "Hey man, she goes, I can get you some players on your show." And I said, "Can you get me Keith Richards?" Cause she mentioned something. She goes, "Yeah, I probably can." I'm like, give me a fucking break.
Right.
Hey, my buddy does a podcast. God, I'd imagine that would be like.
Keith Richards was, I was always a modest fan of the Stones. I liked Satisfaction and, Start Me Up and all that stuff. Going way back with it. I think one of the great, and I don't think this was Keith. I think this was Brian, but one of the greatest guitar solos I think in rock history was on the Rolling Stones' Heartbreaker. What a great sound on it.
That was, I think, Mick Taylor, wasn't it?
Mick Taylor might have
been. Because he to me, that's their best period guitar wise, man. He lit them on fire. Yeah, that was from was that from Goat's Head Soup, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah,
but Keith is just he's a rock and roll badass.
Yeah,
he sure. Just I've been watching some documentaries on him recently on the band on Netflix, and he was just badass. Yeah. And the Rolling Stones exhibit was here in Nashville for a couple of months at the Musicians Hall of Fame. I went down and checked that out, and I loved it. They had probably about 30 of Keith's guitars. And with them were little stories, something about the guitar, either how he obtained it, when he used it, what he liked about it, and it's very clear his approach to playing music is very soulful, and in his stories that really came across of how soulful it was. Nothing technical in any of his explanations or stories about these guitars, but all of it very soulful, very spiritual.
Yeah.
And I really appreciated finding that out about him and about his playing.
Well, that's a perfect example of what music's all about and why they're so popular. It has nothing to do with technique, man. It has to do with how are you making what's the transference of energy, and how does that, how are you making people feel, man? Yeah.
And Van Halen's the same way. Yeah. I loved every incarnation of Van Halen. But for me, the Dave years, and I hate to say that because I know Sammy, but the Dave years were the best, and it was all about energy.
Yeah.
When they hit the stage, it was like somebody just drove an 18-wheeler through the audience, at full speed, and it was just unbelievable the amount of energy that was coming out of four guys.
Yeah. Great band, really great band.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you this because you've been around for a minute and you've played a shit ton of guitars. Best guitar and best amp either you've owned or played.
I'm still going with the McCarty that I'm currently playing.
Awesome.
I'm using Buddha
really?
amps right now. Yeah, and I love the Buddhas.
You know what, man? Not a lot of people play those.
No, I'm discovering that.
Yeah.
No, not a lot of people play that. And they're hard to find. Sometimes if we do fly dates, I always ask for the Buddha, and I rarely get it because they're just they're not out there that much. And, I mean, it's part of what I'm doing with that company is trying to, raise their awareness. But it's tough because we don't have our amps on stage; they're backstage, so people don't see what amp I'm playing through. If you come to a Toby Keith show, they see what guitar I'm playing, but not the amps. But I love the Buddha, and I've played a lot of different ones. I played that Music Man for a long time out on the road professionally. I was playing custom coupes for a while, and I really liked them. But when I went to the Buddha, I was like, "There's something here that I've been missing from all those other amps that I really love." I've got a Marshall that used to belong to Ted Nugent that I really like. And I'm not a Marshall guy. I love hearing other people play a Marshall, but it just doesn't seem to be my thing. But I really do like that particular Marshall. It's an old 900 series, but it's an original 900 series. Like it was built in '89, so it's like one of the early 900s.
Are you a Buddha artist?
Mm-hmm.
Man,
I am.
The only person that it was Leslie West played Buddhas for a while.
Yeah, that's
way
right.
back. And I talk about tone. I mean, holy shit! I remember they had you ever see this video? It's like a Leslie, maybe instructional thing, but he's just talking about that how. When a lot of people were sitting at home playing technique, and he goes, he would just sit and play a note, and just all he focused on was tone and vibrato and just how to get sound out. And he had Buddhas in that particular little tutorial that it was really interesting to, that he would just sit there for hours, how do I get this tone? And what if I tweak turn up the mid range,
He definitely was a tone doctor. You listen to Mississippi Queen. I mean, then that came out in 70, 71, right around in there. And I mean, amazing guitar. It still sounds, like great tone today. It's like nothing's lost on it. It's really an amazing, he's definitely a tone guy.
I interviewed somebody not too long ago. I can't think who it was, but they played with, it was, I think, Rocky Athos. Do you know Rocky? Mm-hmm. And he's a blues guy out of Texas. He played with Mayall for 8 years in the Blues Breakers, but I interviewed him and he was talking with Leslie and talking about writing a song. And Leslie said, "Hey man, all you need is one hit."
Right.
And that's what he was talking about, of course, Mississippi Queen.
Our old bass player passed away a couple of years ago. He's in a car accident. It's been 6 years, but he was at the NAMM show and they were doing a signing for Dean guitars.
Right.
And he was a Dean guy and Leslie West was a Dean guy. And our bass player wrote 2 number one hits with Toby, Chuck Goff. He wrote 2 number one hits with Toby. But he was doing the NAMM thing and it was like, Leslie West and gosh, I can't remember. It's a whole lineup of just amazing, rock and roll guitar players. So our bass player was a little intimidated, sitting on the dais with those guys. And he goes, I was really intimidated to be sitting next to Leslie West, but then I realized I've written one more hit than that motherfucker.
That's right. There you go, man. Yeah, there you go. Ever sell a guitar you wish you can get back?
I have never sold a guitar.
Really?
Never, ever have sold a guitar. No.
So you have every guitar you've ever purchased?
Yes.
How many guitars do you have, man? I'm afraid to ask.
About 40. That's
not bad at all. That you've never sold. How come you've never sold one? You just buy and you're not a collector. You buy because you're going to play it, or? Yeah,
I'm not a collector, and I buy guitars, for a purpose, and I hang on to. I still have my first good electric that I got for my birthday or something like that back in '74. It was a Guild S100, sort of an SG shape kind of thing. I still have that, and I played it forever until I wore a hole through the finish on the back of the 7th fret, and it's all scratched up from the '70s belt buckles. It's got a lot of character, and then then it sat in the closet for a long time, and then I broke it out again. I was doing some shows with Shania Twain, And I thought, well, that'd be the perfect guitar for that song that she got. Man, I Feel Like a Woman. It just reminded me of the way that guitar sounded. So I broke it out and played it on that. Since then, that was in 97 or 98, I think, when I played with her. But since then, I've got that guitar set up for slide, and it's really great slide guitar.
That's so cool, man.
Yeah. But yeah, I still have that since 74.
So you're going to be, maybe that's another reason why you like Ted. Isn't he the guy that said, you're going to have to pry it out of my cold, dead hands or something like that, right? That's you, man. That's you. I'm not giving it up.
No.
Do you remember the first record you bought?
I remember getting the 45 of Smoke on the Water.
Oh, that's cool.
That was big. And it had the live version on the back.
That's really cool.
The B-side was a live version, yeah. And I honestly may still have that somewhere. And that was back, of course, when that was a new song. But that's the first song that I remember just feeling like I've got to have that so I can play it over. And my mom was so patient with me because that song ended. I picked up the needle, put it back on, played it again. Yeah. And again and again, and I never got yelled at for it. So she was very patient with me, with that. But I really love that song. So I remember getting that, and I think the first record I remember buying was Bachman Turner Overdrive.
Not Fragile? Oh, Head On? Yeah.
Oh, Head On. It was a little bit later after the Not Fragile. But yeah, Head On was the first album I think I remember buying.
Man, they made some good records, BTO, didn't they?
I think they did. Yeah. Some people, I've heard some people say that they think that they sucked, but I
really? What was sucky about them? They had great vocals, I don't know. Amazing guitars, pounding drums, really good rock band.
Yeah, it's really good rock band. And Randy's so melodic. Randy Bachman is so melodic with his playing. He's one of those guys where the guitar parts are part of the song.
Man, I'm going to write him down because I got to get him on here if he's even does interviews.
I bet he does. I met him doing an interview actually in 95. I was doing an interview with the band I was with, and he was at the radio station getting ready to do an interview right after us. And I didn't recognize him. He's a little older than I remember seeing him in the 70s. And then the secretary at the station said, so-and-so will be with you in a minute, Mr. Bachman. And then I thought, the beard, kind of heavy set, this is Randy Bachman. So I went over and introduced myself. Yeah.
But cool. You look at those Guess Who songs. Talk about great melodies, man.
Oh, man. Yeah.
It's tremendous.
Bert Cummings says that he learned so much about music from Randy Bachman.
Yeah. So. I'm surprised anybody would say criticism.
Yeah,
I really shouldn't be surprised. I mean, there's always a fucking critic, for everything.
I went to an induction, a musicians Hall of Fame induction. A lot of people were inducted, including Randy, and he got up and played some of the old Guess Who stuff. It was like a medley. He did some Guess Who, and then started doing some of the BTO stuff. And I was like, oh, this is heaven for me.
Yeah,
hearing him sing that stuff.
Desert Island Discs. Top 3, just for now, knowing it'll change tomorrow. No particular order.
Yeah, like 3?
Yeah.
Steve Vai, Passion and Warfare. Steve Morse, The Introduction, his first solo after the Dregs. And anything that has Christmas classics on it. The old Bing Crosby, Nat King Cole stuff. I would definitely want that with me on a desert island.
You like Christmas music? I
do. I love Christmas music. I think a lot of the music is really good. The changes, the change. It's kind of from a more jazzy approach on a lot of that old classic stuff. I love Christmas. I love Christmas. I love Christmas music.
Yeah, Christmas is a good season, man. It is. It really is. My wife always likes this time of year. The holidays come around.
Yeah.
All right. Most important things, Rich, that you've learned about yourself through your career experience and just through getting beat up by life in general. Assuming that life beat you up a bit.
Yeah, of course it has. Who hasn't it beat up?
I asked somebody, I say that in jest because, of course, but one time I asked a version of that question to someone like, hey, what mistakes have you made and that you would have corrected? Something like that. And I have none.
You made no mistake.
Yeah. And I didn't even like respond because I'm like, what am I going to say to that? Like, okay.
What I've learned about myself, I think, is that I'm more motivated than most people. And I never realized that because, you just kind of go through life being who you are. But doing this professionally, I see a lot of people that don't seem to be quite as motivated, or they feel like maybe something is owed to them instead of having to work for it. And so I think just my motivation, and I think that's part of what's kept me working, is being that way.
You know what? I think that entitlement thing, man, I don't know where that comes from. I don't know if it's like mom told you were wonderful too many times, but that's like
my mom told me I was wonderful. She was very encouraging with the music thing and all that, and so I don't know where that comes from really either.
Yeah, it's for me. I have a problem with that. I don't deal with that well. It's just, I'm not going to jump on anybody for it, but it's just like it's a huge turnoff for me because it's like entitled to. None of us are entitled to anything except what you work for. In my opinion, for whatever.
Right. Yeah.
I'm with you 100%, man. Yeah. Definition of happiness.
That's a really tough question. I don't know that I have an answer for that. I don't know. I'm generally pretty happy. I'm happy working. That's for sure. Work excites me. Knowing that people think enough of me or my playing to say, hey, I want you on this project. That makes me happy.
Sure. I'm like that. I'm working makes me happy. That's a blessing and a curse. Do you find that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you have a hard time like dialing down and not the opposite, like relaxing. I have a hard time anyway with that. Yeah.
No, I do too. Even when I'm relaxing, I think I find myself working. I'll have people over to the house, and it pleases me to no end to make sure everybody's got a beer or everybody's got food or whatever. So it's like, well, am I actually relaxing? No, I'm still kind of working this deal.
Oh, I know. I remember a few years. It was quite a while now back, maybe about 8 or 10 years ago, even. I came down. I've always worked at home, and I think I came downstairs and it's like 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock at night. And like, this is when all my kids were home. So this has to be, about 10 years ago. And everybody turns around and looks at me and my wife's just like, what are you doing here? And I'm like, I don't know. It was horrible, man. Cause like, I was like uncomfortable. Like, I don't know. Like, I feel like I should go back upstairs and go back to work. It was really funny, which is bad. It's not good. And the older you get, at least for me, I'm trying to really work hard to fix that, cause you realize, you got so much time left. You ain't going to remember how much work you did, Yeah,
no, that's just true. I gave that advice to one of our crew guys who had a health issue, and I called him to check on him. He had to miss a couple of days, and I called him to check on him. And he said, man, I just can't wait to get back out to work. And I said, well, think about this, when you're on your deathbed, are you going to be laying there going, man, I wish I worked more?
Yeah, no, it ain't going to happen.
Yeah.
I'm lucky. I have like yesterday, my son asked us to come over to the house and hang out, my older son. And I was a little reluctant. He goes, Dad, it's Sunday.
Yeah, right.
And he goes,
Sunday,
put your shit down and just come over and relax.
Yeah.
And I did. And I'm so glad, that I listened to him. So,
yeah.
Best childhood memory.
When I was 5 years old, I should start by saying both of my parents were Austrian immigrants. They came to the States a couple of years before I was born. And so when I was 5 years old, my mother took me and my brothers back to Austria. It was my first time going, her first time back, to visit her family in 6 or 7 years. And that was just an amazing memory for me. I feel like that was my childhood. We went for about 2 months, and I can take you around Salzburg, Austria, and say, this is where we played soccer, and this is where we, played hide and seek. I have cousins, that all lived there. So, I had my cousins there to play with and all that. And to me, that was my childhood is being there during that time. That's my best childhood memory, I think.
What was so special about that?
I I tell you, Salzburg, Austria is really a magical place. I think it is for a lot of people, but when you're connected to it through blood, I think that really makes it that much more. I step off the airplane in Salzburg and just breathe the air in, and I go, I'm home.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you still go back then?
I do. I was just there last Christmas, actually. Yeah.
That's great, man. Yeah. Really cool. Are your folks still around?
My folks are not. No, I still have my cousins and my aunt and uncle that live in Salzburg are still there, and I go visit them. Yeah, but my parents are both gone now.
I'm sorry about that, but it's so good you got to go over there, man.
Yeah.
Tell me something about yourself people would either be surprised to hear, Rich, or might find a little odd.
About 4 years ago, I did a gallery exhibit of my artwork.
Oh, you do cartoons, right?
No, I mean, this was actually oil paintings.
Wow.
Yeah, oil paintings. Yeah.
Dude, what's up with that? That's awesome.
Yeah, thanks. I've always just kind of painted for fun and stuff. I mean, I was drawing before I learned how to write.
What kind of stuff do you paint? That's phenomenal, man.
Kind of pseudo realistic landscapes and stuff like that. I don't do portraits because I don't ever feel like I can. I've never had the ability to capture someone's soul in a painting. So I do inanimate objects, street scenes and stuff like that. So that was the kind of stuff that I did. And I had a couple of paintings. Some friends of mine owned a pizzeria, and I did some paintings for them, some New York street scenes. And a curator of an art gallery came in and saw it and started inquiring about the artist. And so
in a pizza shop.
In a pizza shop.
That's wild, man. You never know who's watching, who's listening.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
so cool.
Yeah. So, she and I talked and she convinced me. I told her, I said, well, all I've got are the two paintings that you saw at the pizzeria. She goes, well, I can't get you in for a year and a half. So you got 18 months to paint. And so I was like, I could shy away from this, or I can, go to my grave with this great story about how I had a gallery exhibit. So I went ahead and painted my butt off for 18 months and did an exhibit.
Are these up online anywhere?
No, they're not actually.
Dude,
no.
Why? You gotta.
I don't know.
Limited edition Rick Eckhardt's.
Yeah, I have one hanging in my house. I have one in particular that I really liked that I called The Gift. And it's the painting of the inside of a church. And there's a tremendous amount of light coming through a corridor to the left of the painting, and then a small figure on the bottom right of this giant church with these great big old pillars is me sitting on a chair playing guitar.
Wow, that's really cool, man.
Yeah.
What was the inspiration for that? Like, were you in a certain church that like?
No, the inspiration for it was I'm grateful for the gift of music that God gave me, and so that was what I painted. Dude,
that is awesome, man.
Yeah, and instead of me being a major central figure, because I'm a peon in God's eyes, I'm
sure.
So I'm back kind of off in the shadows in there, but it's
wow,
I'm still there,
that's pretty deep, man. That's really cool.
Yeah, thank you.
Man, that is great.
I've got that one hanging in my house. That was my favorite that came out of that experience.
Wow. Yeah. That's really cool, man.
Yeah, thank you.
If you ever continue with that, let me know. I'd love to check out some of your stuff, man. I love art. And
people keep asking me if I'm going to continue painting, and I just it's hard. It's hard. It's a hard thing to do. I'm a great admirer of people that can express themselves through a canvas. And I was just in Spain a couple of weeks ago and went to the Picasso Museum. Picasso was an interesting cat. His style changed. He's the guy that had two eyeballs on one side of your head and all that kind of stuff. Great quote from him that I read. Some of his early works are very lifelike portraits of people, and these are things that he painted when he was 14 or 15 years old. And the quote that he said that I loved, he said, "As a child, I learned to paint as an adult. As an adult, I learned to paint as a child."
That is cool, man.
And I just thought, man, that's really awesome. He'd learned to paint more what he felt rather than what he saw. And I think that's pretty incredible. But I really have a great admiration for for people that can express themselves through art.
Well, obviously you can do that.
Yeah, I guess, but I'm not. I'm no Picasso.
Wow. Yeah, but who is? That'd be like me saying I love playing guitar, but I'm no Rick Eckhardt. You'd be like, Craig, go do it, man. Right?
Right.
Person who's had the biggest influence on your life, both musically and personally.
My mom, I think, has probably had the biggest influence on my life in general. She didn't musically, other than her support of my music. But I think she's really been a huge impact on me. I lost her. It's been 22 years ago now. She was very young.
So she was young. Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, she died of cancer. But yeah, she was a huge influence on my entire life. And I still, to this day, hope that my actions meet her approval.
Wow. That's nice, man.
That's how strong of an influence she had on me.
Yeah. That's really sweet, man. Very cool. You have any non-musical superpowers besides painting?
I'm very handy around the house.
Like MacGyver handy?
Yeah, kind of like MacGyver. Yeah, give me a rubber band and some gum, and I'll fix your kitchen sink for you.
That's awesome, man. That is a superpower, dude. It really is.
Yeah. No, I'm handy. I mean, I'm good with plumbing, light, electrical, painting, that kind of stuff, just fixing things in general. I'm good at figuring out how things are supposed to work, and reversing that so that it's so that it works again.
That's a good tagline. I'm good at figuring out how. That would be good for like a therapist. I'm good at figuring out how things are supposed to work.
Right,
Fucking sign me up right now.
Yeah.
What are you proudest of, both musically and personally?
I think I'm proudest of being able to work for as long as I have at the level that I have. I mean, I've been on stage with Toby for 20 years, and for 10 years before that, I was with other major artists, and I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud of that, because I've seen a lot of guys that I think are incredibly talented, and they can't sustain the work. So I think there's a talent to that as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. How about personally? Anything that you're proudest of? Non-musically, I probably should say.
I think, well, I mean, I don't know how much I had to do with this. This is just good genes, but I'm very proud of my health.
Yeah.
And my creativity. I mean, I'm a older individual now, and I still don't need to wear glasses.
Dude, that is pretty awesome.
Yeah. And my physicals every year are, pristine, and I'm very proud of that.
But you say you take care of yourself, though, don't you?
Yeah, I do take care of myself. Yeah, I try to.
Yeah.
I just got back from the gym this morning, before the interview, and so yeah, I try to.
Good. You have to. I mean, if you it's.
I think I think you do. I see a lot of people that don't, and I see what that result is.
Oh, you could tell.
They're just so. The truth is, I'm just not brave enough to live like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have the courage to not be healthy.
Well, when you've been working out or whatever, doing something physically for so long, it's who you are.
Right.
And to suddenly not do that, you'd feel, I know I'd feel awful.
Yeah.
I'd feel awful.
Yeah.
And then I feel worse.
I would too.
Yeah. And you see people you went to high school with, you're like, fuck, man, when did you just stop giving a complete shit about yourself, man? Like, have you ever even driven by a gym or a fucking a track or a tennis court or whatever the hell it is?
Yeah.
Has your life been different than what you'd imagined?
Not really that different. I mean, this was my hope.
That's awesome.
That I would be able to live the life that I am, to be able to play music professionally. So I can't really say it's all that different. I had hoped to have a family, kids and all that, and I didn't manage that. But so maybe that's a little different than what I expected. But this was my hope, that to play music, whether it was in the country music field, rock and roll, on a Broadway show, it didn't matter. Sessions, whatever I could do. I just wanted to play music. So this was the hope. So it's not too much different than I anticipated.
That's wonderful, man. That's really great. It's interesting. I was talking to my wife yesterday. I don't know how this topic came, but more musicians than not don't really have families. I think more on percentage of like versus the general non-musician population that do not have families.
We're difficult.
Well, you're not home.
We're difficult. Yeah. Not being home is difficult. The being a creative individual is difficult. I mean, I'm not Mozart or Eddie Van Halen, to the point where my creativity inhibits me from being able to walk among the masses. But, being a creative person, it's a very unique mindset. Mm-hmm. And I think it makes it sometimes difficult to interact with people that don't understand where you're coming from.
I totally get that, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Best money you ever spent on something? Musically, non-musically, doesn't matter.
In 1993, I bought a Jeep Wrangler that I still drive now. It's been my only car for the last 25 years.
Wow.
Yeah. I paid 13 even for it, $13,000 even, brand spanking new.
That's wild. And you know what, man? I love those cars. I had one, but like after 7 or 8 years, I found it was like, man, I need to see a chiropractor if I keep this thing.
Yeah.
It was so rough on me.
Everybody told me that, and I've not found that to be a problem. And I'm at a point now where I don't drive marathons with it. I mean, I've done, I've driven to Dallas with it, Oklahoma. I've driven to Maryland with it. I remember I did a New Year's Eve gig once up in Flint, Michigan, and I drove it up there for that. So, I mean, I've taken some road trips with it, but I'm mostly it's just an around town thing for me. Pretty low mileage per year on it now. But I love because I can just throw my gear in the back and just go. And when I had dogs, it was that my dogs used to love going for rides in the Jeep, and I don't know, it's just been a fun vehicle and a really good investment. When you look at it, I mean, 13 grand is all I've spent on a car in the last 25 years.
That's pretty. Is it hard top or rag top?
It's a rag top.
Those are great. That's exactly what I had. There's so much fun when I don't know, it's probably you've noticed over time, I would imagine it's less and less where you could pull the top down because of the heat.
I still do it.
You still do it? Good for you.
I still do it. Yeah, I still do it. But I'll tell you the one thing that you cannot count on is the weather forecast to be correct. I can't tell you how many times they said no chance of rain today, got the top off, and I'm sitting at a stoplight with it pouring rain on me, on my head.
Yeah,
it just kind of makes me, every time that happens, it just makes me laugh.
Yeah.
I don't get mad about it. I'm just like, I just start cracking up. This is so funny. I'm sitting in the pouring rain in my vehicle.
Expectations, man.
Yeah.
Favorite place you've traveled? I'm sure you've been all over the world at this point.
I have been to a lot of places. My favorite place is still Austria. I talked about earlier. I still go back there. I still love going back there. It's my home away from home. That is absolutely my favorite. But I love traveling in general.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Toughest decision you ever had to make or hardest thing you ever had to do?
My divorce, without a doubt. That was a very, very difficult time in my life. And it was a tough decision and a really, really difficult time. You can't go back. You can't go forward.
Yeah.
You're just kind of stuck. And then you don't know what's at the other end when you come out. And then on top of that, you're breaking somebody's heart. And it was really, really a very tough time for me.
Yeah. And I've been through a divorce. I know exactly what you're talking. And it's, for me, I thought, something like getting into a relationship is sometimes there's no book on that, but it seems like a normal thing. But a divorce, it seems very abnormal, like unwinding this thing. Yeah, that's what I felt.
Yeah, very much so. And then, people get, defensive and they're protective of themselves because they realize they're all alone now.
Yeah.
Somebody that you've counted on to be your partner for however many years you were together, you're now seeing in a completely different light because you can't count on them anymore. So it's a difficult time for anybody. I've seen a lot of my friends go through it too, and it's never has there been one that's been easy.
No, for sure, man. Most important lesson your business has taught you?
just to stick to your guns, I think is the thing that I've learned the most, and that my gut's usually right. So I think I've learned that from just doing what I do.
I think everybody's gut is usually right. You know, you got to listen to it. Yeah.
It seems like it. Or for the most part. Yeah, I would say so.
And man, last question, Rich, and I can't thank you enough. This has been totally cool, and you're awesome.
Oh man, it's been a wonderful interview. Thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, my pleasure. Believe me. Biggest change in your personality over the last 10 years, and how much of this has been deliberate and intentional, and how much is just a part of aging?
I can't really say if this is a part of aging or if it's just because of the experience. I guess that's kind of the same thing, isn't it? Aging and experience. But I think recognizing and being more aware of how people see me, I think has been the biggest change in my life. You know, I don't think I considered that growing up when I was younger, how I'm being perceived. I just did what I did. I said what I said, and I felt like I had a purpose and a goal in mind. But I think I've become more aware of how I'm being seen as I'm doing that. And, you know, basically I think that goes hand in hand with, you know, being more aware of other people's feelings.
So more understanding, it sounds like.
Yeah.
That's
I think
cool,
so.
man. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you find that less stressful too?
I tell you what, sometimes taking the high road is really hard.
Yeah.
You know, so I don't know that I would find it less stressful necessarily, but it's certainly a better way to live.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about things coming back on you, you know, because it's like, well, hey, you knew the situation. I was upfront about it, but you know, but again, that's kind of getting off of, you know, being aware of how people see me a little bit, but you know, just maybe it is a little less stressful. Just kind of being more conscientious of that when I'm speaking with people or interacting in general with them.
Dude, you're awesome. Let me tell people where they could find you. First of all, come out and see Rich playing with Toby Keith. Not that Toby needs me to sell tickets, but go check out by a long shot.
Whenever possible. It's an amazing show. Whether you're a country fan or Toby fan, it doesn't matter. It's an amazing show. And
man, do you bring that guitar with you, the Camo? That must be really cool. That's what I
Camo one, yeah. A lot of times, I try not to bring it every year. I'll bring it out every other year.
Yeah.
So I'm due to bring it out. I didn't have it out with me this year, but I will take it out next year again. Just to kind of mix it up a little bit, so it's not always the same.
Well, check out Rich playing with Toby Keith, and Rich has got a couple of records, solo records that are really, really good and really well. What's the verbiage on it? That are great records.
Amazing.
That are fucking amazing records, and you get to see Rich Eckhardt blazing the shit out of 6 strings.
There you go.
Now I did it right. And check those out on richeckhart.com. And his last name is spelled ECKHARDT, richeckhart.com. And man, and hopefully Rich will either be unveiling some new paintings or new music, and we'll be talking about him here another time.
Oh, that's great. I really appreciate it, Craig. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me. I mean, I love the show.
Thank you, man.
It's great. Yeah. It's been a great thing to be a part of.
Thank you so much. Everybody, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this interview, share it with a friend on your social media channels. We appreciate your support and help with this. Thanks again to Rich Eckhardt for spending time with us. Please support Rich. Check him out with Toby, and check out his website at richeckhart.com. Again, it's ECKHARDT. And if you're in Austria, look for him. Make sure to go to the homepage of everyonelovesguitar.com. Sign up to get on our newsletter list. You get advance notice of guests and the opportunity to send in your questions. And most important, remember that happiness is a choice, so choose wisely. Be nice, go play your guitar, and have fun. Till next time, peace and love, everybody. I am out. We hope you enjoyed this show. If you did, subscribe to the Everyone Loves Guitar podcast, and you can do this online at everyonelovesguitar.com or on iTunes. And if you like the show, please leave us a 5-star positive review. The more 5-star reviews we get, the higher our show ranks, and higher rankings mean we get to continue speaking with cool, interesting guests on our show. We'll see you on the next episode, and until then, Keep playing your guitar and have fun making music.